The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. But what happens when something defies every sensor, every theory, every rational explanation? When a being of impossible power chooses to live among those bound by mortality and law? The Federation had spent 6 months studying that question. Now, they were about to act on their conclusions. Kal-El stood on the observation deck of Starbase 375, watching the stars shimmer against the infinite black. 6 months in this universe, and he still marveled at how similar yet fundamentally different it was from his own. No Daily Planet. No Lois. No Batman watching from the shadows or Lex Luthor scheming in Metropolis. Just the vast expanse of space, filled with civilizations he'd never imagined and conflicts he was still learning to navigate. He tried to help. That was what he did. What he'd always done. But here, helping wasn't simple. The Federation had rules. The Prime Directive. Protocols for first contact. Diplomatic procedures that could take months to navigate while people suffered. He understood the wisdom behind these principles, respected them even. But understanding and accepting weren't the same thing. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice came from behind him, smooth and practiced. All those stars. Endless possibilities. Endless threats. Superman didn't turn. His superhearing had detected the man's approach 3 corridors away, the measured footsteps, the controlled heartbeat of someone trained to remain calm under pressure. "You're not Starfleet," he said quietly. "Not officially." The man stepped beside him, a human in his late 40s with graying temples and eyes that had seen too much. He wore a nondescript civilian outfit, but there was something military in his bearing. "Though I serve the Federation in my own way. You can call me Sloan." Section 31. Superman's jaw tightened. Admiral Ross had warned him about Federation intelligence's black. The Dominion War showed us how vulnerable the Federation truly is. We won, but barely. And there are other threats on the horizon. The Borg. The Romulans. Species and powers we haven't even encountered yet. He turned to face Superman fully. "You're the most powerful being in the Alpha Quadrant. Maybe the entire galaxy. We need you. The Federation has made it clear they don't want me interfering in their affairs." "The Federation Council is composed of idealists and politicians," Sloan said dismissively. "They talk about principles while real threats gather in the darkness." Section 31 deals with reality. We do what's necessary to protect the Federation, even when that means operating outside official channels. He stepped closer, voice lowering. "We have enemies gathering intelligence on you right now. The Tal Shir. The Obsidian Order. Even elements within the Dominion. They see what you are. A weapon that could tip the balance of power. If you won't work with us, they'll find ways to use you against us. Or worse, they'll find ways to eliminate you. Let them try. Bravado won't save you here, Mr. Kent. This isn't your universe. We've run simulations. A concentrated barrage of quantum torpedoes. Exposure to certain types of radiation that don't exist in your home reality. A transporter rigged to scatter your molecules across a light year. You're powerful, but you're not invincible. Not here." Superman's expression hardened. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." Sloan's voice remained calm, almost friendly. "But it doesn't have to be your reality. Work with us. Selectively. Discreetly. Help us address threats that Starfleet can't officially acknowledge. In exchange, we'll dedicate our resources to sending you home. We have scientists who make Starfleet's best look like academy cadets. We have access to technology that doesn't officially exist. And we have the motivation to make it happen. The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. But what happens when something defies every sensor, every theory, every rational explanation? When a being of impossible power chooses to live among those bound by mortality and law? The Federation had spent 6 months studying that question. Now, they were about to act on their conclusions. Kal-El stood on the observation deck of Starbase 375, watching the stars shimmer against the infinite black. 6 months in this universe, and he still marveled at how similar yet fundamentally different it was from his own. No Daily Planet. No Lois. No Batman watching from the shadows or Lex Luthor scheming in Metropolis. Just the vast expanse of space, filled with civilizations he'd never imagined and conflicts he was still learning to navigate. He tried to help. That was what he did. What he'd always done. But here, helping wasn't simple. The Federation had rules. The Prime Directive. Protocols for first contact. Diplomatic procedures that could take months to navigate while people suffered. He understood the wisdom behind these principles, respected them even. But understanding and accepting weren't the same thing. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice came from behind him, smooth and practiced. All those stars. Endless possibilities. Endless threats. Superman didn't turn. His superhearing had detected the man's approach 3 corridors away, the measured footsteps, the controlled heartbeat of someone trained to remain calm under pressure. "You're not Starfleet," he said quietly. "Not officially." The man stepped beside him, a human in his late 40s with graying temples and eyes that had seen too much. He wore a nondescript civilian outfit, but there was something military in his bearing. "Though I serve the Federation in my own way. You can call me Sloan." Section 31. Superman's jaw tightened. Admiral Ross had warned him about Federation intelligence's black. "Why?" Superman asked. "If I'm as valuable as you say, why help me leave?" "Because a willing ally for 6 months is worth more than a resentful prisoner for 6 years. Sloan pulled out another PADD, this one displaying a star chart with several systems highlighted. "These are flashpoints. Places where conflicts are brewing that could destabilize entire sectors. We're not asking you to conquer planets or assassinate leaders. We're asking you to do what you do naturally, save lives. Prevent catastrophes. Be the hero you've always been. Just, selectively." Superman stared at the star chart, his mind racing. Everything Sloan said made a terrible kind of sense. He'd felt the frustration over the past 6 months, watching situations deteriorate while Starfleet debated and discussed. He could save people. Prevent wars. Stop disasters before they started. And if it meant getting home to Lois, to his Earth, to the life he'd lost. But he'd heard this argument before. From Lex. From Amanda Waller. From every person who'd ever tried to control him, to weaponize him, to turn him into a tool for their vision of the greater good. "I need time to think about it," Superman said finally. Sloan nodded as if he'd expected this answer. "Of course. But don't take too long, Mr. Kent. The galaxy won't wait for you to make up your mind. And neither will our enemies." He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Oh, and one more thing. There's a situation developing near the neutral zone. Romulan warbirds have surrounded a Federation medical ship. Officially, we're in negotiations. Unofficially, those doctors and nurses have about 6 hours before the Romulans decide they've extracted enough intelligence value and destroy the evidence." He glanced back. "Just thought you should know." Then he was gone, leaving Superman alone with the stars and an impossible choice. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. Superman stood motionless, his superhearing tracking Sloan's departure through the starbase, his mind analyzing every word of their conversation. Section 31 wasn't just recruiting him. They were testing him. The medical ship wasn't coincidence. It was bait, designed to see what he'd do when confronted with a crisis Starfleet couldn't officially solve. And the terrible thing was, it was working. Because people were dying, and he could save them. His hands clenched into fists as he made his decision. The neutral zone stretched before him like a line drawn in the void, an invisible boundary that had prevented war for generations. Superman had studied the history during his months in this universe. Romulans on one side, Federation on the other, and between them a buffer of empty space where neither side was permitted to establish military presence. Treaties. Protocols. The carefully maintained balance of power that kept the peace. He was about to shatter it. The medical ship Hippocrates hung in space like a trapped animal, surrounded by 3 Romulan warbirds whose weapon signatures Superman could detect even from this distance. His vision pierced through the void, seeing past the warbirds' hull plating to the crew within, Romulan Centurions at tactical stations, their fingers hovering over disruptor controls. And inside the medical ship, 43 life signs. Doctors. Nurses. Patients being transported to Starbase 212. All of them radiating the elevated heart rates and stress hormones of people who knew they were running out of time. He'd left Starbase 375 without authorization. Without informing Starfleet. Without following any of the protocols Admiral Ross had carefully explained to him. Because by the time Starfleet mobilized a response, negotiated, positioned assets, those 43 people would be dead. Superman accelerated, breaking the warp barrier without a ship, his Kryptonian physiology allowing him to survive the impossible. It still felt wrong, the way space bent around him differently here, the subtle resistance that didn't exist in his home universe. But he'd learned to compensate, to push harder, to adjust. The warbirds detected him 3 seconds before he arrived. He watched their sensor arrays pivot, heard the scramble of confused communications between the ships. Unknown energy signature approaching at impossible velocity. Shields up. All weapons to. Superman decelerated, coming to a stop directly between the medical ship and the lead. Woman named Pilar, ordering her crew to send a priority message to Starfleet. They'd be demanding to know what happened. Admiral Ross would be furious. Section 31 would be analyzing every second of this encounter. And somewhere out there, Sloan would be watching, noting that Superman had chosen to act. That he'd bypassed official channels to save lives. Exactly what Section 31 wanted to see. 23 minutes later, the Hippocrates crossed the border into Federation space. The warbird escort peeled away, returning to formation around Superman. "Your turn," Seattle said. Superman took a deep breath, unnecessary in vacuum, but the habit of humanity remained. Then he allowed himself to be caught in the transporter beam, his molecules shimmering and reforming inside the warbird's secured holding chamber. The room was small, reinforced, and lined with technology designed to dampen energy signatures. 4 Romulan guards stood at attention, disruptors trained on him. In the center of the room was a chair with restraints clearly designed for someone of significant strength. "Sit," ordered a Romulan scientist, a woman whose medical insignia marked her as the chief researcher. "And extend your arms." Superman complied, sitting in the chair and allowing them to secure his wrists. The restraints hummed with energy, some kind of force field technology interwoven with physical bonds. They wouldn't hold him if he chose to break free, but he'd given his word. The scientist approached with a scanning device, her expression a mixture of clinical detachment and barely suppressed fascination. "Remarkable. Your cellular structure is unlike anything in our database. Each cell appears to be absorbing and storing solar radiation at impossible efficiency." "It's what I am," Superman said quietly. "A Kryptonian. Last son of a dead world. Last son." The scientist made a notation on her PADD. "Intriguing. Commander Seattle, I recommend we begin the interrogation immediately." This opportunity may. Warbird. He floated in the vacuum, arms crossed, backlit by the distant stars. The gesture was deliberate, non-threatening but unmistakable. I'm here. Try to go through me. The Romulan commander appeared on a view screen that materialized in front of him, a holographic projection from the Warbird's communication system. She was middle-aged by Romulan standards, with the characteristic pointed ears and severe expression of someone accustomed to command. The insignia on her uniform marked her as a high-ranking officer. I am Commander Seidel of the Romulan Warbird Valdor, she said, her voice cold and measured. You are in violation of the Neutral Zone Treaty. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. The Hippocrates is a medical vessel, Superman replied, his voice carrying across the communications channel without need for technology. He'd learned to vibrate his vocal cords at frequencies their sensors could detect. It poses no threat to the Romulan Empire. Let it go. That ship entered the neutral zone without authorization. It is now subject to Romulan authority. Siegel's eyes narrowed. You are the anomaly. The one called Superman. Starfleet's pet weapon. I'm not Starfleet's anything. I'm someone asking you to show mercy to unarmed medical personnel. Mercy. Siegel's expression didn't change. An interesting concept from someone who could destroy my ships with a thought. Tell me, Superman, do you show mercy to ants before you step on them? I don't want to destroy anyone. I want those people to go home safely. And I want intelligence on Federation medical technology, defensive capabilities, and the location of your starbases along this border. Siegel leaned forward slightly. But we don't always get what we want. The Hippocrates crossed into our territory. By treaty law, it is forfeit. If Starfleet wishes to negotiate its return, they may do so through proper diplomatic channels. A process that, I understand, can take months. Superman's jaw tightened. Quadrant. Intelligence that could shift the balance of power. All she had to do was release one insignificant medical ship. And what does Starfleet say about this arrangement, she asked. Starfleet doesn't know I'm here. That got a reaction, a slight widening of her eyes, quickly suppressed. So you admit to operating without authorization. Interesting. The Federation's weapon has gone rogue. The Federation's ally has made a choice to save lives. Do we have a deal or not? Another pause. Then, 72 hours. Full cooperation. And you will answer 5 questions, not 3. 4. Agreed. Siegel's expression remained neutral, but Superman heard the acceleration of her pulse, excitement, carefully controlled. The Hippocrates will be escorted to the Federation border and released. You will beam aboard the Valdor and submit to our custody. Any resistance, any attempt to escape before the agreed time expires, and we will consider it an act of war. Superman nodded slowly. He was gambling that the Romulans would honor their word. They were known for many things, but breaking explicit agreements wasn't typically among them. Their deviousness lay in interpretation and implication, not outright betrayal of stated terms. One condition, he added. I want to see the medical ship safely across the border before I submit to your restraints. Suspicious. But acceptable. Siegel gestured to someone off-screen. Commander Telek will escort the Federation vessel to the border. Once it crosses safely, you will transport to my ship. Agreed? Agreed. The second warbird, the Devorus, moved into position beside the Hippocrates. Superman watched through the hulls as confused medical personnel were informed they were being released, their relief palpable even from this distance. The convoy began moving, heading toward Federation space at impulse speed. Superman floated motionless, waiting. Inside the Hippocrates, he could see the ship's captain, a middle-aged human. She was right about the law. The medical ship had strayed into the neutral zone due to a navigational malfunction, making it technically subject to seizure. But law and justice weren't always the same thing. "I can't let you take that ship," he said quietly. "Then you will start a war." Siegel's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "The moment you attack a Romulan vessel, you prove what we've long suspected. That the Federation harbors a weapon of mass destruction in violation of countless treaties. Every intelligence report we've filed about you will be vindicated. And the Romulan Star Empire will have justification for immediate military response." She had him trapped, and she knew it. Attack, and he'd give the Romulans the war they wanted. Retreat, and those 43 people died. This was why Starfleet had protocols, why they negotiated endlessly. Because in this universe, every action had consequences that rippled across entire civilizations. But there was always another option. "What if I trade myself for them?" Superman said. The proposal hung in the void between them. Siegel's expression shifted, not much, but enough. She was interested. "Explain." "I'll allow myself to be taken into Romulan custody for, let's say, 72 hours. You can study me, scan me, run whatever tests you want. In exchange, the Hippocrates and everyone aboard goes free. Immediately." Unacceptable. Siegel's rejection was immediate. "You could escape at any moment. What guarantee do we have of your compliance?" "My word." Superman met her gaze steadily. "I'll submit to restraints. I'll cooperate with your scientists. And I'll answer 3 questions about my capabilities truthfully. But the medical ship leaves now, unharmed, and this incident is forgotten." Siegel was silent for a long moment, calculating. Superman could hear her heartbeat even across the vacuum, could see the subtle shifts in her posture as she weighed the offer. A chance to study the most powerful being in the not come again. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Siegel on the bridge. "Agreed. Superman, as per our arrangement, 4 questions. I suggest you answer honestly. Our telepaths will know if you lie." Superman hadn't considered that. Vulcans had telepathic abilities, it made sense that their Romulan cousins retained some measure of that capacity. He'd have to be careful, truthful, as promised, but strategic about what he revealed. "First question," Siegel began. "Your power source. You claim to draw strength from solar radiation. Could you be rendered powerless by removing access to yellow sun wavelengths?" "Yes," Superman answered. "The truth, but not the full truth. Red sun radiation suppressed his powers in his home universe. Here, the physics were different enough that he wasn't certain if the same vulnerability applied." Second question. "Are you truly the only one of your kind? Could more Kryptonians arrive in our universe?" "I'm the only Kryptonian I know of in this reality. Whether others could arrive." He paused, considering. "The rift that brought me here was random. Could it happen again? Possibly. But I have no way to make it happen deliberately." Siegel nodded, making notes. Third question. "You have chosen not to align fully with the Federation, despite their hospitality. Why? This was more dangerous territory." Superman chose his words carefully. "The Federation is built on principles I respect. But I've learned that blindly following any organization, any government, leads to compromise. I help where I can, how I can, but I won't be anyone's weapon." "Admirable." Siegel's tone suggested she found it anything but and foolish. "In this galaxy, independence is weakness. You will eventually be forced to choose a side." She leaned forward, and Superman saw the calculation in her eyes. Fourth and final question. "If the Romulan Empire offered you what the Federation cannot, a way home to your universe, would you accept?" The chamber went silent. The guards tensed almost imperceptibly. The scientist stopped her scanning, waiting. It was the same offer Sloan had made, repackaged. Everyone wanted to use his desperation, his homesickness, as leverage. No, Superman said finally. Not if the price was becoming your weapon instead of theirs. I'd rather stay trapped here as a free man than go home as someone's puppet. Cecil stared at him for a long moment, searching for deception. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. Not warmly, but with something approaching respect. An honest answer. Foolish, but honest. She gestured to the scientist. Proceed with the medical examination. 72 hours begins now. As the Romulan researchers began their work, Superman settled in for what would be the longest 3 days of his life. But those 43 people from the Hippocrates were safe. That was what mattered. Outside the secured chamber, transmitted on encrypted Romulan channels, his interrogation was being analyzed by the Tal Shiar. And on a Federation frequency that officially didn't exist, Section 31 was recording everything, adding it to their growing file on Superman. The game had begun. And every player wanted the same piece. Dr. Beverly Crusher studied the bioscan results for the third time, hoping they'd somehow change. They didn't. The genetic profile displayed on her medical monitor was simultaneously fascinating and deeply troubling, a testament to biological engineering that made the Federation's most advanced genetic work look primitive by comparison. This can't be natural evolution, she murmured, highlighting a section of the DNA strand. No species develops this level of optimization without intervention. Perhaps on Krypton, evolution followed different rules, Captain Picard suggested. He stood beside her in the Enterprise's medical bay, hands clasped behind his back in his characteristic pose. We've encountered species with remarkable natural abilities before. Not like this, Captain. Beverly expanded the image, showing the cellular structure in detail. Every cell functions as a solar battery, storing and converting stellar radiation with near-perfect efficiency. The tissue density is variable, soft enough to appear human, strong enough to withstand phaser fire. And the neurological structures. She shook her head. His brain processes information at a rate that makes even Data's positronic pathways seem slow. Picard frowned. And this concerns you because it violates every principle of the Federation's genetic enhancement ban. Beverly pulled up another file, Federation Statute 7348. After the eugenics wars, we made genetic engineering illegal precisely because it creates beings like this. Superior strength, superior intellect, superior abilities. Khan Noonien Singh nearly destroyed Earth because he believed his genetic superiority gave him the right to rule. Superman is not Khan, Picard said firmly. No, he isn't. But the law doesn't care about intentions, Captain. It cares about precedent. She gestured at the genetic profile. The moment Starfleet Command sees this analysis, they're going to ask questions we can't easily answer. If Kryptonian genetic. They don't want your expertise, Beverly said. They want your presence. Your story. The pro-enhancement faction wants you to demonstrate that advanced genetics are compatible with Federation values. The anti-enhancement faction wants to question whether you're truly as benevolent as you appear, or if you're simply a more sophisticated version of Khan, a tyrant waiting to happen. Superman shook his head, disbelief mixing with anger. In my world, people feared me sometimes. Questioned my motives. But at least they understood I was trying to help. Here, even helping gets twisted into something political, something dangerous. Welcome to the Federation, Picard said with a slight, wry smile. Where every action is subject to debate, every principle is up for negotiation, and nothing is ever simple. His expression grew serious again. But that complexity is also our strength. We talk instead of fight. We debate instead of decree. It's messy and frustrating, but it's kept the Federation together for 200 years. Captain, Data interjected, incoming transmission from Starbase 375. Admiral Ross requests to speak with Superman immediately. Picard nodded. Put him through. Admiral Ross appeared on the view screen, his expression stern. Mr. Kent, I'll be brief. Your unauthorized intervention in the neutral zone has created a diplomatic nightmare. The Romulan High Command is using your actions as evidence of Federation aggression. They're claiming you're a military asset we deployed in violation of treaty. I told Commander Seattle I was acting independently, Superman protested. Yes, and that made it worse. Now you're a rogue element the Federation can't control. Either way, it's a propaganda victory for them. Ross sighed, rubbing his temples. But that's not why I'm calling. We've received intelligence from multiple sources. Klingon, Ferengi, and Cardassian, all reporting unusual interest in your genetic profile. Someone is offering significant resources. The senator was joined by others, representatives from a dozen worlds, all arguing variations of the same theme. Superman represented evolution's potential. Superman proved that power and virtue could coexist. Superman was the future the Federation had been too afraid to pursue. Turn it off, Superman said quietly. The screen went dark. They're using me, Superman said, anger creeping into his voice. I'm not a symbol. I'm not a political argument. I'm just someone trying to do the right thing in a universe that's not my own. Unfortunately, you don't get to choose what you symbolize, Picard said with sympathy. None of us do. I wanted to be an archaeologist, not a symbol of Federation resolve against the Borg. But after Wolf 359, that's what I became. Whether I wanted it or not. Beverly stepped forward, her tone gentle but firm. If the Federation repeals or modifies the genetic enhancement ban, the consequences could reshape the entire quadrant. The Klingon will see it as the Federation building an army of super soldiers. The Romulans will accelerate their own bioweapons programs. The Cardassians will use it as propaganda to justify their own genetic experiments. You could trigger an arms race that makes the Cold War look peaceful. Then what am I supposed to do? Superman's frustration was evident. Stop helping people. Hide. Pretend I don't exist. No, Picard said firmly. But you need to be aware that every action you take carries weight far beyond the immediate situation. You're not just saving lives, you're creating precedents. Shaping policy. Influencing governments. He paused. There's a session of the Federation Council scheduled for next week. They've requested your presence to testify on the question of genetic enhancement. Testify? I'm not a scientist. I don't know anything about Federation law or genetic policy. Seattle kept her word. No torture, no weapons testing. Just scans, samples, and questions. What kind of questions? Picard asked. The kind that told me they're more interested in understanding my limits than finding ways to kill me. For now. Superman met the captain's gaze directly. I know what I did was reckless. I bypassed protocol, violated the chain of command, and probably gave the Romulans intelligence they'll use against the Federation. But those people on the Hippocrates are alive because of you, Picard interrupted. Yes. And Starfleet Command is currently debating whether to thank you or court-martial you. The problem, of course, is that you're not technically a Starfleet officer, so they can't do either. Then what can they do? That, Picard said carefully, is the subject of considerable debate. Which brings me to an uncomfortable topic. He gestured to Beverly. Show him. Beverly pulled up the genetic analysis, displaying it for Superman to see. We've completed our own bioscan. Your DNA, Superman. It's extraordinary. And problematic. Superman studied the image, his expression unreadable. Because it's enhanced. Precisely. The Federation banned genetic engineering over 200 years ago after the eugenics wars. Khan and his followers, genetically enhanced humans, nearly conquered Earth. They were stronger, smarter, more adaptable than natural humans. And they used those advantages to justify tyranny. Beverly paused, choosing her words carefully. Your existence challenges the fundamental reasoning behind that ban. I didn't engineer myself, Superman said quietly. I'm not some lab creation designed to be superior. I'm just the product of my planet's natural evolution. But that's the question, isn't it? Picard interjected. Was Krypton's evolution truly natural? Or did your ancestors engage in genetic engineering so long ago that it became normalized? Either way, your abilities far exceed what we consider natural human variation. Represent achievable enhancement, if we could theoretically replicate even a fraction of his abilities. Then every government, every military force in the quadrant will want it. Picard completed the thought, his expression darkening. And Superman becomes not just a person, but a template. A blueprint for creating super soldiers. Exactly. Beverly closed the file, but her concern remained etched on her face. I've kept this analysis classified at the highest level. Only you, myself, and Admiral Ross have access. But the Romulans have had him for 72 hours. They've been running their own tests. And if they publish their findings, or worse, if they attempt to replicate his biology. The door to the medical bay opened, and Commander Data entered with his characteristic precise movements. Captain, the Romulan warbird Valdor is approaching the neutral zone border. They are transmitting a message that Superman is being returned as agreed. On screen, Picard ordered, moving toward the monitor. The view screen showed Superman floating in space once again, released from Romulan custody exactly 72 hours after his capture. He looked unharmed but tired, an unusual state for someone supposedly invulnerable. The strain of maintaining his word, perhaps. Or the cost of submitting to 3 days of invasive study. Mr. Data, beam Superman directly to the medical bay. Aye, Captain. The transporter effect shimmered, and Superman materialized on the pad. Beverly immediately moved forward with a medical tricorder, scanning him with practiced efficiency. I'm fine, Doctor, Superman said, stepping down from the pad. Let me be the judge of that. You've just spent 3 days as a Romulan test subject. Stand still. Beverly's scanner moved across his torso, noting elevated stress hormones but no physical damage. No tissue damage. No cellular degradation. They were careful with you. They were thorough, Superman corrected. But yes, careful. Commander. And that makes certain parties in the Federation very nervous. Superman's eyes narrowed. Certain parties like Section 31. Among others. Picard walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. The Federation Council is divided. Some see you as a refugee deserving of protection and assistance. Others see you as a dangerous precedent, living proof that genetic enhancement can create beings of godlike power. And still others see you as an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To re-examine our genetic engineering laws. Beverly brought up another file, a legislative proposal submitted to the Federation Council 3 days ago. There's a faction arguing that if Kryptonian genetics can exist naturally, then perhaps our ban on genetic enhancement is too broad. That we're limiting humanity's potential out of fear rather than wisdom. Superman read the proposal, his jaw tightening with each line. They want to use me as justification to create enhanced humans. Not just humans. Every species in the Federation. Augmented Vulcans with even greater telepathic abilities. Enhanced Andorians with superior combat prowess. Genetically optimized betazoids. Picard turned from the viewport, his expression grave. Your existence has become a political catalyst for forces you didn't intend to unleash. Captain, I never wanted. I know. But intent doesn't matter in politics. What matters is perception and opportunity. Picard gestured to Data. Commander, show him the transmission from Bataste. Data brought up a news broadcast, a Betazoid senator speaking passionately before the Federation Council. For 2 centuries, we have allowed fear to dictate policy. But now we have proof that advanced genetics need not lead to tyranny. Superman, a being of unparalleled power, chooses peace. Chooses service. Chooses to limit himself by moral principle rather than by law. This proves that enhancement and ethics are not mutually exclusive. For samples of your DNA. Superman felt a chill despite his invulnerability. Who? We don't know yet. The transactions are being routed through intermediaries, hidden behind layers of plausible deniability. But the pattern suggests a major power or organization with deep resources. Section 31 is investigating, but... Ross hesitated. Superman, you've become valuable. And in this galaxy, valuable things attract dangerous attention. What do you recommend, Admiral? Picard asked. Officially, Superman should accept protective custody on a secure Federation facility until we can assess the threats and develop appropriate countermeasures. Unofficially, Ross's expression softened slightly. Watch your back, son. Trust is a rare commodity these days, and a lot of people see you as either a weapon to acquire or a threat to eliminate. The transmission ended, leaving silence in the medical bay. He's right, Beverly said quietly. I've kept your genetic analysis classified, but the Romulans have their own data now. And if someone is actively trying to buy samples... She didn't finish the thought. She didn't need to. Superman walked to the viewport, looking out at the same stars Picard had contemplated minutes before. In his universe, his DNA had been the subject of Lex Luthor's obsession, cloning attempts, genetic experiments, efforts to replicate or weaponize Kryptonian biology. He'd thought escaping to this universe meant leaving that nightmare behind. But human nature, or sentient nature, was apparently universal. Power attracted those who wanted it. And genetic power was the most seductive of all. I won't be anyone's lab specimen, Superman said finally. And I won't be used to justify experiments that could create the next Khan. If the Federation Council wants my testimony, I'll give it. But I'll tell them the truth. Truth, that power without wisdom is tyranny, whether it comes from genetics or technology or sheer military force. A noble sentiment, Picard said. But be prepared, Superman. Truth is only as powerful as the people who choose to hear it. And in my experience, councils tend to hear what they want to hear, regardless of what's actually said. Before Superman could respond, the Enterprise's red alert klaxon sounded. Data's hands moved across his console with mechanical precision. Captain, sensors are detecting an energy signature consistent with Borg transwarp conduit formation. Distance, 0.7 light-years and closing. Picard's expression hardened instantly. Battle stations. All hands to combat readiness. He turned to Superman. It seems our philosophical debate will have to wait. The Borg have found us. Or, Beverly said quietly, looking at Superman with growing concern, they've found him. Through the viewport, space began to tear open. A green swirling vortex that defied natural physics. And emerging from it, massive and implacable, came a Borg cube. Its first transmission was simple, direct, and terrifying in its implications. We are the Borg. The one designated Superman will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. The Borg cube filled the view screen, a massive geometric nightmare of technology and malevolence. Superman had read the files on the collective, the hive mind that had devastated Starfleet at Wolf 359, that had turned Captain Picard himself into their puppet Locutus, that represented perhaps the greatest existential threat to organic life in the galaxy. But reading about them and facing them were entirely different experiences. Shields up, Picard ordered, his voice carrying the weight of past trauma. Arm all weapons. Mr. Worf, target their shield generators and propulsion systems. Aye, Captain. The Klingon security officer's fingers moved across his tactical console. Quantum torpedoes armed. Phaser arrays charging. Superman watched the cube approach with supervision that penetrated its hull, seeing the maze of corridors within. Thousands of drones moving with perfect synchronization, their biological and mechanical components working in seamless union. Each one had been an individual once. Each one had been assimilated, stripped of identity, absorbed into the collective single consciousness. They said they're here for me, Superman said. Let me go out there. Talk to them. Talk. Worf's tone was dismissive. The Borg do not negotiate. They assimilate. There is no reasoning with them. Mr. Worf is correct, Picard said, though his eyes remained fixed on the cube. The Borg don't want conversation, Superman. They want your distinctiveness added to their own. Your biological and technological uniqueness. I don't have any technology. No, but you are technology, Data interjected, his positronic brain processing at maximum capacity. Or rather, your biology functions as technology. Your cellular structure converts solar radiation into physical power with efficiency that exceeds our best antimatter reactors. To the Borg, you represent perfection they have not yet assimilated. The cube's transmission came again, this time more specific. We have analyzed Romulan intelligence data. The one designated Superman possesses biological distinctiveness that will be added to our own. All species will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. They bought the Romulan scans, Beverly said, horror creeping into her voice. Someone sold them your genetic profile. Superman's hands clenched into fists. 3 days ago, he traded himself to save a medical ship. Now that act of mercy had given the Borg exactly what they needed. Detailed analysis of his biology, his capabilities, his cellular structure. The Romulans had sold him out. Cube is charging weapons, Worf announced. They are targeting our shields. Evasive maneuvers, pattern Delta 7, Picard ordered. The Enterprise banked hard, but the cube matched their movement with unnatural precision. A beam of green energy lanced out, striking their shields with devastating force. Shields down to 87%, Worf reported. Return fire? Not yet. They're testing our defenses. Picard's jaw was tight. Mr. Data, analysis. The cube is operating at 73% capacity. Damage from a previous encounter, possibly with species 8472 based on the hull scoring patterns. However, even at reduced efficiency, their weapons significantly outmatch our defensive capabilities. Estimated time until shield failure, 4 minutes, 22 seconds. We need reinforcements, Riker said from his position beside Picard. The nearest starship is the Defiant, but they're 3 hours away at maximum warp. We don't have 3 hours. Picard turned to Superman. You asked if you could talk to them. I don't think it will work, but I won't stop you from trying. Just be careful, if they get their hands on you, they'll assimilate you. And a Borg Superman is something the galaxy can't afford. Superman nodded and headed for the turbolift. Beverly called after him, Superman, wait. If you're going out there, you should know something about Borg assimilation. It's not just couldn't assimilate, couldn't adapt to quickly enough. Species 8472, according to your own designations. They hurt you because they thought differently than you expected. That's what individuals do. We surprise you. Species 8472 represents biological distinctiveness that will eventually be assimilated. As will you. As will all species. The drone took a mechanical step forward. You will comply. And if I don't? Then we will take you by force. The Enterprise will be destroyed. All biological and technological distinctiveness aboard will be assimilated. This outcome is inefficient but acceptable. Superman could see inside the cube, drones moving into position, weapons charging, assimilation chambers being prepared. They weren't bluffing. If he refused, they'd cut through the Enterprise like it was made of paper. 43 people from the Hippocrates had been saved 3 days ago. Now over 1,000 souls aboard the Enterprise hung in the balance. I have a counter-proposal, Superman said. I'll let you scan me. Full analysis, no resistance. But you don't assimilate me, and you leave the Enterprise alone. You get the data you want without the conflict. The drone was silent for 3 seconds, an eternity for the collective's processing speed. Unacceptable. Data is insufficient. We require integration. Your biology must be tested under collective control to determine optimal utilization. Then we have a problem. Because I'm not letting you turn me into a drone. Your compliance is not required. The drone raised its assimilation arm. You will be assimilated. It lunged forward with mechanical precision. Superman caught its arm mid-thrust, his grip stopping the motion cold. The drone's strength was considerable, hydraulics and servos designed to overpower most humanoids. But Superman's strength operated on a different scale entirely. I said no. He released the drone and accelerated backward, putting distance between himself and the cube. Inside the Borg. Disruptors, photon torpedoes, and something else, a weapon that created cascading energy disruptions across the cube's surface. A transmission cut through the Borg's communications. Borg vessel, you face the Imperial Klingon Defense Force. Release the warrior called Superman, or we will destroy you completely. You have 30 seconds to comply. Kapla. The Borg's response was immediate. Klingon vessels are irrelevant. You will be assimilated. We are Klingon, the commander roared. We do not submit. Warriors, attack. The fleet converged, pouring fire into the damaged cube. The Borg returned fire, but they were already weakened from their encounter with Species 8472. Their shields buckled under the concentrated assault. Inside the cube, the force fields containing Superman flickered. The power systems were being diverted to shields and weapons, leaving less for internal containment. Superman seized the opportunity, punching through the weakened barrier and accelerating toward the exterior hull. He burst through the cube's surface just as a Klingon torpedo detonated against the structure, creating an explosion that would have vaporized most beings. Superman rode the shockwave, using it to propel himself clear of the cube. The largest Klingon ship, a Navar-class warship, transported him aboard with unexpected precision. He materialized on the bridge to find himself surrounded by Klingon warriors, all of them armed and watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. At the center of the bridge stood Chancellor Gowron himself, his distinctive wide eyes fixed on Superman with unsettling intensity. So. The legend in flesh. Superman. The one who cannot be killed. Chancellor Gowron, Superman said, trying to catch his breath despite not needing oxygen. Thank you for the rescue, but why? Why did we save you? Gowron laughed, a harsh sound. Because the Borg taking you would be a disgrace. If anyone is to test themselves against an people once. They deserved better than death, even if they were trapped in the collective's nightmare. But there were too many. For every drone he disabled, 3 more took its place. His superhearing detected the whine of weapons charging throughout the cube. They were going to bury him in firepower and drones until he couldn't resist anymore. Then he heard it, Picard's voice over the Enterprise's communication channel, transmitted on a frequency his enhanced hearing could detect. Superman, we're leaving. Engaging warp drive. You've given us the opening we needed. Get out of there. He could feel the Enterprise's warp engines engage through his enhanced senses, the ship accelerating away from the battle. They were escaping. The crew was safe. Now he just had to survive. Superman punched through another bulkhead, trying to reach the cube's exterior. But the Borg had anticipated this. Force fields activated around him. Not the simple energy barrier Starfleet used, but complex multi-phase containment that adapted to his struggles. When he pushed against one frequency, it shifted to another. When he tried to use heat vision to burn through, the field modulated to absorb the energy. "You will be assimilated," the collective's voice echoed through the chamber. "Adaptation is inevitable." Drones closed in, a wall of mechanical precision. Superman braced himself for a fight he wasn't sure he could win. His powers were still adjusting to this universe. His strength was immense but not infinite here. And the Borg adapted to everything eventually. One of the drones raised its assimilation arm. Superman prepared to dodge. And then the entire cube shuddered violently. Not from Superman's impact, but from external weapons fire. Massive, devastating weapons fire that punched through the cube's shields like they were tissue paper. Through the hull, Superman saw them, Klingon warships. Dozens of them, a full battle fleet emerging from warp and opening fire with everything they had. Physical. They inject nanoprobes that rewrite your cellular structure, suppress your individuality, connect you to the collective consciousness. I don't know if your biology can resist it. Only one way to find out. Superman stepped into the turbolift. Transporter room. Moments later, he materialized in space directly in front of the cube. The vacuum didn't bother him. He'd spent the last 6 months learning to hold his breath for extended periods, sometimes hours when necessary. His Kryptonian physiology processed the solar radiation that permeated space, converting it into stored energy. The cube halted its advance. Superman could feel their sensors scanning him, analyzing every molecule, every energy signature. Somewhere inside that massive structure, millions of drones were accessing the Romulan data, comparing it to their direct observations, cataloging his potential addition to the collective. A single drone transported out, materializing 50 meters in front of him. It had once been Cardassian, based on the visible neck ridges beneath the mechanical implants. Its left arm had been replaced with a mechanical appendage tipped with assimilation tubules. Its eye was covered with an ocular implant that glowed with sickly green light. When it spoke, the voice was a synthesis of thousands. "We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Your biological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile." "I'm not resisting," Superman said calmly. "I'm asking you to reconsider. You say you want perfection, but assimilation isn't perfection. It's uniformity. There's a difference." "Incorrect. Perfection is the synthesis of all distinctiveness into singular purpose. Individual thought creates conflict, inefficiency, chaos. The collective eliminates these weaknesses. It also eliminates creativity. Innovation. The ability to solve problems in unexpected ways." Superman gestured to the cube. "You're damaged. That hull scoring, you encountered something new." Vessel, he watched drones react, thousands of them moving toward transport points, preparing to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. The cube fired. A cutting beam designed to slice through starship hulls lanced toward him. Superman dodged, his speed making the beam seem almost slow. But another beam followed, then another. The Borg were adapting, calculating his movement patterns, predicting trajectories. A beam grazed his shoulder. Pain, actual pain, flared through his arm. The cutting beam was different from phasers or disruptors. It operated on quantum principles that could affect even his dense molecular structure. Not enough to seriously harm him, but enough to hurt. They could wound him. Maybe, given enough time and firepower, they could kill him. More drones transported out, dozens of them surrounding him in a sphere. Each one raised their assimilation arms in perfect synchronization. If they all fired simultaneously, if even one tubule penetrated his skin and injected nanoprobes. Superman made a decision. He couldn't fight them all, couldn't risk assimilation, couldn't let them destroy the Enterprise. But he could give Picard time to escape. He flew directly at the cube, accelerating to a significant fraction of light speed in the space of seconds. His physics worked differently here than in his home universe, but raw momentum was still momentum. He hit the cube's hull like a meteor, his impact creating a shockwave that rippled through the structure. Metal screamed. Circuits exploded. Drones were thrown off their feet throughout the vessel. Superman punched through the outer hull, then through interior bulkheads, creating a tunnel of destruction as he penetrated deep into the cube's core. Drones converged on his position from all directions. He met them with controlled fury. Catching assimilation arms before they could strike, throwing drones into walls with precise force calculations. Not enough to kill if he could help it, but enough to disable. These had been unkillable warrior, it should be Klingon, not those soulless machines. He stepped closer, his hand resting on the bat'leth at his waist. Besides, I have a proposition for you. One that doesn't involve assimilation or Federation bureaucracy. Behind them, through the view screen, the Borg cube was retreating, damaged, unable to withstand the Klingon fleet's assault, but not destroyed. It would repair. It would adapt. And someday, it would return. But for now, Superman had escaped assimilation. At the cost of owing a debt to the Klingon Empire. What kind of proposition? Superman asked warily. Gowron's smile was predatory. The kind discussed over blood wine, not in the middle of battle. Come. We have much to talk about. And you, Superman, have much to learn about Klingon honor. The Great Hall of the Klingon High Council was everything Superman expected and nothing he was prepared for. Massive stone pillars carved with the history of Klingon conquest rose toward a vaulted ceiling. Banners bearing the insignias of the great houses hung from the walls, each one representing centuries of warrior tradition. And at the center of it all, the council itself, 23 Klingon leaders seated in a semicircle, their eyes fixed on the outsider who stood before them. Superman stood alone in the supplicant circle, acutely aware that he was the first non-Klingon ever invited to address the High Council in this manner. Around the chamber's perimeter, guards in full armor stood at attention, bat'leths and disruptors at the ready. Not that weapons would do much against him, but the symbolism was clear, he was here as a guest, not a prisoner. The distinction mattered to Klingon. Chancellor Gowron rose from his seat, his ceremonial robes flowing as he gestured to Superman. Warriors of the Empire. 3 days ago, we learned that the Romulans captured the one called Superman. We learned that he traded his freedom for the lives of weaklings aboard a Federation medical ship. Some called this foolish. Others called it noble. He paused, his wide eyes sweeping across the council. I call it Klingon. Murmurs rippled through the assembled leaders. Some nodded approval. Others looked skeptical. The warrior's code is simple, Gowron continued. Face your enemies with courage. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Die with honor rather than live with shame. Superman demonstrated these principles when he chose captivity over cowardice. And when the Borg came for him, those honorless machines who steal souls and turn warriors into slaves, he fought. Alone. Outnumbered. He gave the Enterprise time to escape. Gowron's voice rose. He showed the spirit of a Klingon warrior. This is why we saved him from assimilation. This is why he stands before us now. I widened in something like joy. Yes. Finally. A worthy opponent. He adapted instantly, using technique to compensate for Superman's superior speed, positioning himself so that Superman's quickness became partially negated by spatial constraints. They fought for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. And then Superman saw it, an opening, genuine and unavoidable. Martok had committed to a strike that would take a fraction of a second too long to recover from. Superman could cut him right across the arm. First blood. Victory. But something stopped him. Some instinct that went beyond winning or losing. This fight had become something more than a test. It had become mutual respect made manifest. And ending it with a cut felt wrong. Like breaking something valuable. So Superman did something completely unexpected. He lowered his bat'leth and stepped back. Enough. Martok froze mid-strike, confusion crossing his scarred face. What? The fight is not over. Yes, it is. Superman placed the bat'leth on the ground. General Martok, you're one of the finest warriors I've ever faced. Your skill, your courage, your honor, all of it is beyond question. I could probably cut you if I used my full speed and strength. But that wouldn't prove anything except that I was born with advantages you weren't. It wouldn't make me a better warrior. Just a faster one. You refuse victory. Gowron's voice came from above, shocked. I refuse to devalue what this fight meant, Superman said, looking up at the Chancellor. You wanted proof of my worth. I'm giving it. A truly independent warrior doesn't need to prove superiority over allies. He needs to prove he can recognize worth in others without diminishing it. Martok is a great warrior. I'm a powerful being. Those aren't the same thing, and trying to compare them misses the point. The chamber was absolutely silent. Then, slowly, Martok began to laugh. A deep, genuine sound that echoed off the stone walls. Gowron. Did you? Then he proves himself without honor, Tal said, and we will know the truth of his character. But I do not believe this will happen. I watched the recordings of his confrontation with the Borg. He fought to protect others, not himself. He damaged the cube to buy the Enterprise time to escape. That is not the behavior of someone who uses and discards allies. Superman listened to them debate his nature, his motives, his potential allegiances. It was strange being discussed like a strategic asset while standing right there. But at least the Klingon were honest about it. The Federation wrapped their calculations in philosophy and protocol. Section 31 hid behind plausible deniability. The Klingons simply stated what they wanted and why. I can't join the Empire, Superman said finally. I won't swear loyalty to any government, Klingon or Federation or otherwise. I've seen what happens when powerful beings become tools of the state. It never ends well. Then what will you do? Gowron demanded. Drift between alliances, trusted by none, belonging nowhere. If necessary, yes. Superman's voice was firm. But I'm willing to offer something else. Not alliance, but mutual respect. I won't fight for the Empire, but I won't fight against it either unless your actions conflict with my principles. And if there's a crisis that threatens both the Empire and the Federation, I'll help however I can. Neutrality, Kopech spat. The coward's position. Independence, Superman corrected. I'm not Klingon. I'm not human. I'm Kryptonian, and I'm the last of my kind. That means I have to define my own code, my own honor, because there's no one left to teach me what Kryptonian values should be in this universe. Martok studied him for a long moment, then turned to Gowron. Chancellor, he speaks with a warrior's heart, even if he rejects a warrior's allegiance. I propose we accept his terms. An independent Superman is more valuable than a resentful one bound by false oaths. I'm bound by chains or threats. And I'll leave when our conversation is finished, whether you like it or not. Kopech's hand moved toward his DK Tog knife. Arrogance. Truth, Superman corrected. I respect the Klingon Empire. I'm grateful you saved me from the Borg. But I won't pretend to be something I'm not. If you want honesty, I'll give it. If you want submission, you're talking to the wrong person. For a long moment, tension filled the chamber. Then Kopek laughed. A deep, genuine sound. Gowron, he has the fire of a warrior, I'll grant you that. He sat back down. Very well. Let us speak truth. What does Superman want from the Klingon Empire? Superman considered the question carefully. Information. Understanding. The Federation operates by laws and protocols that sometimes prevent them from acting when action is needed. Section 31 operates in shadows and wants to use me as a tool. The Romulans see me as a specimen to study or weapon to acquire. The Borg see me as distinctiveness to assimilate. He met Gowron's gaze directly. What do Klingons see when they look at me? A warrior without a house, Martok said, his single eye studying Superman intently. A fighter with strength but no context. No history. No legacy. He stood, walking down from his seat to circle Superman like a predator evaluating prey. In Klingon society, your individual power means nothing without a house to belong to, a cause to fight for, a story to build. You are adrift, Superman. Powerful but purposeless in this universe. I have purpose, Superman objected. I help people. I stop threats. I react, Martok interrupted. You respond to crises as they appear. But reaction is not purpose. It is reflex. A true warrior chooses his battles according to a code, a philosophy, a vision of what the universe should be. He stopped in front of Superman. The Federation's vision is order through democracy. The Romulan vision is power through secrecy. The Borg vision is perfection through assimilation. What is your vision, Superman? What kind of galaxy are you fighting to create? The question struck deeper than Superman expected. In his own universe, the answer had been clear: truth, justice, hope. He fought to protect humanity's potential, to show people they could be better than their worst impulses. But here, in a universe with hundreds of species and competing philosophies, what did those concepts even mean? I'm still figuring that out, Superman admitted. Then you need time, Gowron said. Time to understand this galaxy before you reshape it with your power. And the Empire can offer you something the Federation cannot: freedom from their endless debates and moral hand-wringing. Among Klingon, action speaks louder than protocol. At what price? Superman asked. You didn't rescue me from the Borg out of kindness. You want something. We want alliance, Gowron said bluntly. Not servitude. Not ownership. Alliance between equals. He spread his arms wide. The Klingon Empire faces threats on all sides. The Dominion may be defeated, but they still control the Gamma Quadrant. The Romulans plot in the shadows. And there are rumors of powers in unexplored space that make even the Borg seem insignificant. We need warriors. Strong warriors. Honorable warriors. You could be such a warrior. As what? A mercenary? A weapon? As a symbol, Martok interjected. The Klingon Empire that embraces a powerful outsider demonstrates strength, not weakness. We show the galaxy that we judge beings by their courage and honor, not by their species or origin. This strengthens our position diplomatically while gaining your considerable abilities as an ally. Counselor Tal, a younger warrior who had been silent until now, stood. And if he refuses? If he takes our rescue and returns to the Federation, giving them intelligence about our military capabilities, our strategic thinking, our can dish out. We'll see, Superman said. The council chamber's center floor opened, revealing a combat ring below, a circular arena with sand covering the floor and weapon racks along the walls. Martok descended first, selecting a batleth from the rack and testing its weight with practiced ease. The curved blade gleamed under the chamber's lighting. Superman followed, his boots touching the sand. He'd studied Klingon combat techniques over the past months, watched holodeck recordings, analyzed the biomechanics. But studying and doing were different things. He selected a bat'leth, feeling the unfamiliar weight. The weapon was designed for Klingon physiology, longer reach, heavier blade, balance points that assumed different muscle structure. "Ready yourself," Martok said, taking a fighting stance. Superman mirrored the position, acutely aware that everyone in the chamber was watching. This wasn't just about proving himself to the Klingon. It was about understanding this culture, respecting their ways without surrendering his own independence. "Begin." Gowron's voice echoed through the chamber. Martok moved with shocking speed for someone his size and age, the bat'leth whistling through the air in a horizontal slash aimed at Superman's midsection. Superman blocked, the weapons clanging together with a sound like thunder. The force of Martok's strike vibrated through the blade, surprising Superman with its power. The general pressed the attack, using the bat'leth as curved design to hook around Superman's guard, trying to create openings. Superman defended, his superior speed allowing him to track Martok's movements, but he was deliberately holding back, fighting at perhaps 20% of his full capability. The point wasn't to win easily. It was to demonstrate skill. "You fight well," Martok grunted between strikes. "But you hold back. This is not a dance, Superman. This is combat. I'm trying not to hurt you. Then you insult me." Martok's next strike came fast. Gowron's expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Agreed. But independence requires proof, Superman. Among Klingon, we test warriors through combat. Not to the death," he added quickly, seeing Superman's expression, "but to first blood. A ritual challenge that demonstrates skill and courage. You want to fight me?" "No," Gowron said. "I want you to fight him." He pointed to Martok. "Our greatest living warrior. One eye, countless scars, veteran of 100 battles. If you can draw his blood in honorable combat, you prove your worth as an independent warrior. If you cannot..." He shrugged. "Then perhaps you are not as formidable as the legends suggest." Martok smiled, his scarred face transforming into something almost eager. "What say you, Superman? Will you face me in the ring? Or will you hide behind your invulnerability?" Superman looked at the assembled council, at the warriors watching with intense interest, at Martok's challenging grin. This was a test, but not the kind Section 31 would devise. Not manipulation or politics. Just straightforward Klingon directness, prove yourself or lose their respect. "I accept," Superman said. "But I have conditions." "Conditions?" Tal scoffed. "The challenged does not make conditions. The challenged is also the only one who can fly through a Borg cube," Superman replied calmly. "So yes, conditions. First, we fight with bat'leths, not bare hands. I don't want to accidentally hurt General Martok with my strength. Second, first blood means first blood, the fight stops immediately when one of us is cut. And third, this stays between us. No recordings, no witnesses beyond this council. I don't need footage of this fight spreading across the quadrant." Gowron considered this, then looked at Martok. The general nodded slowly. "Acceptable. A bat'leth levels the field somewhat. And I appreciate your concern about my well-being," he added with heavy sarcasm, "though I assure you, I've survived worse than whatever you." General Martok, the one-eyed warrior who led the Klingon defense forces, stood. "Noble words, Chancellor. But words are wind. What matters is action. What does the Empire gain from sheltering this outsider? The Federation wants him. The Romulans want him. The Borg want him. We have just made enemies of all three by taking him from that battle. We made enemies." Gowron laughed. Martok, we have been enemies with the Romulans for centuries. The Borg are enemies of all life. And the Federation. He waved dismissively. The Federation is our ally when convenient and our obstacle when not. Nothing has changed except that we now possess something they all want. Possess? Superman's voice cut through the discussion. I'm not a possession, Chancellor. The chamber fell silent. Speaking without being addressed was a breach of protocol, but Superman had learned that Klingon respected boldness more than they respected rules. Gowron turned to face him, and for a moment, Superman thought he might have overstepped. Then the Chancellor smiled. No. You are not. Which is precisely why you are valuable. He addressed the Council again. The Federation treats Superman like a problem to be solved. A diplomatic complication. A legal question. They debate his genetics, question his motives, and try to fit him into their neat categories of acceptable and unacceptable. He gestured toward Superman. We Klingon understand what the Federation does not. Power is not something to fear or regulate. It is something to respect and honor. Counselor Kopek, an older warrior with a scarred face, rose slowly. The Chancellor speaks of honor, but I see a different truth. This Superman is not Klingon. He was not born to our culture, does not follow our traditions, and owes us no loyalty. What stops him from leaving this chamber and returning to his Federation friends? Nothing, Superman said before Gowron could answer. I'm here because the Chancellor extended an invitation, not because. The Great Hall of the Klingon High Council was everything Superman expected and nothing he was prepared for. Massive stone pillars carved with the history of Klingon conquest rose toward a vaulted ceiling. Banners bearing the insignias of the great houses hung from the walls, each one representing centuries of warrior tradition. And at the center of it all, the council itself, 23 Klingon leaders seated in a semicircle, their eyes fixed on the outsider who stood before them. Superman stood alone in the supplicant circle, acutely aware that he was the first non-Klingon ever invited to address the High Council in this manner. Around the chamber's perimeter, guards in full armor stood at attention, batleths and disruptors at the ready. Not that weapons would do much against him, but the symbolism was clear, he was here as a guest, not a prisoner. The distinction mattered to Klingon. Chancellor Gowron rose from his seat, his ceremonial robes flowing as he gestured to Superman. Warriors of the Empire. 3 days ago, we learned that the Romulans captured the one called Superman. We learned that he traded his freedom for the lives of weaklings aboard a Federation medical ship. Some called this foolish. Others called it noble. He paused, his wide eyes sweeping across the council. I call it Klingon. Murmurs rippled through the assembled leaders. Some nodded approval. Others looked skeptical. The warrior's code is simple, Gowron continued. Face your enemies with courage. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Die with honor rather than live with shame. Superman demonstrated these principles when he chose captivity over cowardice. And when the Borg came for him, those honorless machines who steal souls and turn warriors into slaves, he fought. Alone. Outnumbered. He gave the Enterprise time to escape. Gowron's voice rose. He showed the spirit of a Klingon warrior. This is why we saved him from assimilation. This is why he stands before us now. Harder, the Batletha's blade actually drawing sparks as it scraped against Superman's weapon. Fight like you mean it, or don't fight at all. Superman adjusted, increasing his speed and power incrementally. The Batleths became blurs of motion, their wielders circling each other like predators. Martok's technique was flawless, decades of experience evident in every movement, every feint, every calculated risk. But Superman's speed was becoming too much. He began to see the patterns, anticipate the strikes, position himself for counters. Then Martok did something unexpected. He deliberately overextended on a thrust, leaving his left side exposed. It was a trap. Any warrior who took the bait would find themselves in a vulnerable position for Martok's real attack. But Superman saw through it. Instead of attacking the opening, he stepped back, refusing the bait. Martok grinned. Smart. You learn quickly. Then he shifted tactics entirely, abandoning his defensive posture for pure aggression. The Bat'leth became a whirlwind of strikes, each one forcing Superman to react faster, move more precisely. In the stands above, the Council watched in absolute silence. This wasn't just combat. It was communication, two warriors speaking in the language of steel and strength, testing each other's limits, measuring each other's worth. Superman began to understand something fundamental about Klingon culture. They didn't respect weakness, but they also didn't respect unnecessary cruelty. Martok was testing him not to humiliate him, but to understand him. Each strike was a question: how fast are you? How controlled? How honorable when pushed? Superman decided to answer honestly. He increased his speed to about 50%, his movements becoming impossible for most beings to track. The Bat'leth moved in patterns that defied normal combat physics, his strikes coming from angles that shouldn't work. But he never struck with enough force to truly injure, just enough to challenge. Martok's. He pressed the knife's edge against his own palm, drawing blood, then offered it to Superman. Mix your blood with mine, and the pact is sealed. Superman hesitated for only a moment. Then he took the knife and pressed it against his palm. The blade was sharp enough, the pressure sufficient. A thin line of red appeared, Kryptonian blood mixing with Klingon. He clasped Gowron's hand, their blood mingling. Kapla, Gowron said. May you die well, Superman. Live long and prosper, Superman replied, combining both philosophies. And somewhere in the shadows beyond the Klingon Empire, multiple factions watched and calculated. The Federation saw Superman forming independent alliances. The Romulans saw him gaining military connections. Section 31 saw him becoming increasingly difficult to control. And in the Gamma Quadrant, in a facility where shapeshifters plotted the future of galactic order, the Founders took note that Superman had rejected the Federation and spurned the Borg, yet found common ground with warriors. The Dominion decided it was time to make their own approach. Deep Space Nine hung at the edge of the wormhole like a sentinel guarding the doorway to the Gamma Quadrant. Superman had never visited the station before. His 6 months in this universe had been spent mostly near Earth, learning Federation culture and navigating his new reality. But when the invitation arrived from Station Commander Benjamin Sisko, transmitted through official Starfleet channels with an unusual request for privacy, Superman knew this wasn't a casual meeting. He materialized in DS9's transporter bay, immediately aware of the station's unique character. Unlike the sterile, efficient design of Starfleet vessels, Deep Space Nine retained much of its original Cardassian architecture, harsh angles, dim lighting, an atmosphere of functional oppression that no amount of Federation retrofitting could completely erase. Superman. Welcome to Deep Space Nine. Commander Sisko stood waiting, a tall human with a commanding presence and eyes that had seen too much war. Beside him stood a changeling, the security chief Odo, whose fluid features regarded Superman with professional suspicion. Commander Sisko. Thank you for the invitation. Superman shook the offered hand, noting Sisko's firm grip and the way he maintained eye contact. This was someone used to facing down gods and living to tell about it. Walk with me, Sisko said, leading them out of the transporter room and into the station's main promenade. I thought we should talk face to face, away from official reports and sensor logs. You've had quite a month. Section 31 recruitment attempts, Romulan custody, Borg assimilation efforts, and now a blood pact with the Klingon Chancellor. You've been busy. I've been trying to survive, Superman corrected. Every faction in this quadrant seems to think I'm either a prize to win or a threat to eliminate. And which do you think you are? Odo asked, his voice carrying the gravelly suspicion of someone who dealt with too many threats disguised as visitors. With biological weapons. The Klingon valued genetic superiority through combat evolution. If the technology existed to create beings with even a fraction of his abilities. I need to think about this, Superman said finally. Of course. But don't think too long. Eris stood, straightening her clothing. I am staying on the station for the next 48 hours. If you wish to discuss the Dominion's offer further, I will be available. If you choose to decline. She shrugged. Then I will return to the Founders and recommend they proceed with alternative strategies. She left the booth, moving through Quark's bar with elegant grace. Every eye in the establishment tracked her movement. Dominion presence on DS9 was still rare enough to attract attention. Sisko waited until she was gone, then sat back down heavily. Hell of a choice they're offering you. It's a trap, Superman said. It has to be. Maybe. Or maybe it's exactly what she said, an opportunity. Sisko ordered 2 drinks from a passing Ferengi server, sliding one toward Superman. Raktajino. You'll need the caffeine for this conversation. Superman stared at the beverage. Commander, tell me honestly. If the Federation could replicate my abilities, would they? Sisko was quiet. After watching thousands die because we were outmatched technologically and tactically. He took a drink. I honestly don't know. There are people in Starfleet who would argue that refusing to enhance our capabilities is the same as choosing to lose. That the Prime Directive doesn't apply when it's our own species we're helping. That's the same logic Khan used. I know. And that's why the debate is so dangerous. Sisko met Superman's eyes. But here's what I do know. You're not Khan. You've had 6 months to conquer this galaxy or at least demand tribute, and instead you've saved lives, respected. I do not bite. Her smile was practiced, pleasant, and entirely calculated. Commander Sisko, Superman said without taking his eyes off Eris, what is this? This is politics, Sisko said wearily, sliding into the booth across from Eris. The Dominion requested a meeting with you through official channels. I'm here to observe and ensure things don't escalate. Superman sat slowly, positioning himself so he could react to threats from any direction. The Dominion fought a war against the Federation. Thousands died. Why would I trust anything you have to say? Trust? Eris tilted her head slightly, her large eyes studying him with unnerving intensity. I am not asking for trust, Superman. I am offering information. What you do with it is entirely your choice. What kind of information? The kind that concerns your future in this galaxy. Eris folded her hands on the table, her movements precise and controlled. You have been in our universe for 6 months. In that time, you have become the most discussed being in both the Alpha and Gamma quadrants. Every major power has filed intelligence reports on you. Every strategic analysis mentions your potential impact on the balance of power. You are, whether you intended to be or not, a destabilizing force. I'm just trying to help people. Yes. And that is precisely what makes you destabilizing. Eris leaned forward slightly. The Federation operates on the principle that all species should develop at their own pace, free from external interference. The Prime Directive. A noble philosophy, but one that creates complications when someone like you appears, a being whose very existence interferes simply by existing. Get to the point, Sisko said, his tone suggesting this conversation had been going in circles before Superman arrived. The point, Commander, is that Superman represents something unprecedented. He is not a natural product of this universe, yet he is here. His biology should not function according to our physical laws, yet it does. He possesses power that rivals or exceeds any single being we have encountered, yet he chooses to limit himself. Eris turned her full attention to Superman. The founders are intrigued. Superman's jaw tightened. The founders. Your gods. Our creators, Eris corrected. The founders engineered the Vorta to serve them, the Jem'Hadar to protect them, and countless other species to fulfill specific roles within Dominion society. They understand genetic potential better than any civilization in the galaxy. And they believe they understand you. What makes you think they understand anything about me? Eris reached into her bag and pulled out a PADD, sliding it across the table. Because they have analyzed every piece of data available on you. Starfleet medical scans. Romulan interrogation records. Borg adaptation logs recovered from the cube you damaged. Even trace energy signatures from your blood pact with the Klingon. She tapped the PADD. This is their assessment. Superman picked up the device, scanning the contents. What he read made his blood run cold. The report wasn't just analysis, it was a blueprint. A theoretical methodology for replicating Kryptonian biology using genetic engineering techniques. The founders hadn't just studied him. They'd figured out how to copy him. This is impossible, Superman said, though he could see from the detailed diagrams that it wasn't. The founders' genetic mastery was legendary, and they'd had access to more data than he'd realized. You're saying the Dominion can create more Kryptonians? Not exactly, Eris said. Your biology is unique, the product of a specific evolutionary history we cannot replicate. But we can create beings with similar capabilities. Solar energy absorption. Enhanced cellular density. Accelerated processing speed. It would take years, perhaps decades, and the results would not match your natural abilities. But yes, it is theoretically possible. Sisko's expression had gone dangerously neutral, his poker face when he was furious but refusing to show it. The Dominion is threatening to create an army of super soldiers. That's an act of war. No, Commander. We are offering an alternative. Eris turned back to Superman. The founders have no desire to create such beings. The process would be expensive, time-consuming, and potentially unstable. Moreover, it would trigger an arms race that benefits no one. Every power in the quadrant would attempt their own versions. The Romulans. The Cardassians. Even the Federation, despite their laws against genetic enhancement. She paused. Unless Superman himself helps us prevent it. How? Superman demanded. By joining the Dominion. Eris said it simply, as if offering him a glass of water. Not as a subject or a soldier, but as an equal. The founders are curious about you, genuinely curious. They wish to understand how a being of your power chooses limitation rather than domination. They believe you could teach them something valuable about exercising power wisely. The founders don't need lessons in power, Sisko said coldly. They conquered most of the Gamma Quadrant. Conquered, yes. But at tremendous cost. The war with the Federation taught the founders that domination has limits. That beings who resist out of principle cannot be controlled through fear alone. Eris's expression became almost earnest. Superman, the founders are not evil. They are protective. They created the Dominion to bring order to chaos, to prevent the kind of violence and suffering they experienced from solids before they became shapeshifters. But they are learning that order through force is unsustainable. So they want me to legitimize their rule. Be their mascot. They want you to be their conscience, Eris said quietly. A voice that represents power restrained by morality rather than fear. In exchange, the Dominion will abandon all protocols when you could, and made yourself a target by refusing to choose a side. That tells me something about your character. What does it tell you? That whatever decision you make, it won't be because someone manipulated you into it. You'll choose based on principle, even if it costs you. Sisko finished his drink. The question is, what principle matters most? Preventing an arms race. Maintaining your independence. Finding your way home. Before Superman could answer, an alarm sounded throughout the station. Odo's voice came over the comm system, security alert. Unidentified vessel emerging from the wormhole. Configuration matches neither Federation nor Dominion design. All personnel to stations. Cisco was on his feet instantly. Come on. If something's coming through the wormhole, I want to see what it is. They rushed to the operations center, arriving as the senior staff assembled. Major Kira, Colonel Kira Neres, stood at tactical. Chief O'Brien manned the engineering console. And on the view screen, emerging from the glowing mouth of the wormhole, was a ship unlike anything Superman had seen in this universe. It was massive, larger than a Borg cube but more elegant, constructed from what appeared to be crystalline material that refracted light in impossible patterns. Energy signatures pulsed across its surface in rhythmic waves, and Superman's enhanced vision could detect technology operating on principles that defied his understanding. Hailing frequencies, Cisco ordered. The view screen changed, showing a figure that made everyone in ops go silent. It appeared humanoid but was clearly not, skin that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states, eyes that glowed with internal light, and a presence that radiated power. I am Los, the figure said, its voice resonating with harmonic overtones. I am a founder, though not of the Dominion. I have traveled far to reach this place, drawn by reports of an anomaly, a being from another reality who. Neither. I'm just someone trying to help where I can. Odo's expression was skeptical. I've heard that before. Usually from people who end up causing more problems than they solve. Cisco shot his security chief a look. Odo, could you give us a few minutes? Check on the Bajoran delegation's security arrangements. The changeling nodded curtly and shifted form, flowing into a more aerodynamic shape before moving away with liquid grace. Superman watched him go, fascinated by the biology that allowed such transformation. Don't mind Odo, Cisco said once they were alone. He's suspicious of everyone. Comes with the territory of being security chief during a war. He gestured to the upper level of the promenade. Come on. There's someone who wants to meet you. They ascended to the second level and entered Quark's bar, a bustling establishment filled with diverse species. Bajorans, humans, Ferengi, a few Klingon in the corner drinking blood wine. The atmosphere was almost aggressively normal, a stark contrast to the tension Superman had experienced over the past weeks. In a private booth at the back sat a figure that made Superman's enhanced vision focus immediately. Female, humanoid, but with skin that seemed to shimmer slightly under the bar's lighting. She wore elegant civilian clothing, and her posture radiated calm authority. Superman, Cisco said quietly, I'd like you to meet Eris. She's a diplomatic envoy from the Dominion. Superman's muscles tensed involuntarily. The Dominion, the Gamma Quadrant power that had waged a brutal war against the Federation and its allies. Shape-shifting founders who saw themselves as gods, genetically engineered Jem'Hadar soldiers bred for loyalty and combat, and Vorta administrators who served with religious fervor. The woman, Vorta, Superman realized, stood and offered a graceful bow. Superman. It is an honor to finally meet you in person. I am Eris, second of the Dominion's diplomatic corps. Please, sit. I promise. Research into replicating your abilities. We will share our genetic findings with you, allowing you to ensure no other faction can successfully create Kryptonian analogs. And we will provide resources to help you find a way home to your universe. There it was again. The same bait everyone used, the promise of going home. Section 31 had offered it. Now the Dominion. Everyone assumed his homesickness was a lever they could pull. Why should I believe any of this? Superman asked. The Dominion fought a brutal war. You've killed thousands. You've enslaved entire species through genetic conditioning. And now you want me to trust that you've suddenly developed a conscience? No, Eris said. I want you to recognize opportunity when you see it. The Dominion is rebuilding. The Founders are reconsidering their approach to governance. This is a moment of genuine change, and your presence could influence the direction that change takes. She leaned back. Or you can refuse, and watch as every major power in the galaxy attempts to create their own version of you. Some will fail catastrophically. Others will succeed partially, creating beings of immense power without your moral foundation. It's not manipulation if it's true, Eris said calmly. Commander, you know how governments think. You know what they do when they see a military advantage. Right now, Superman is unique. But the moment one faction successfully creates an enhanced being, even an inferior copy, the arms race begins. It is inevitable unless someone stops it. Superman sat in silence, processing the implications. Everything Eris said aligned with what he'd learned about this galaxy. The Federation had fought the eugenics wars over genetic enhancement. The Romulans were already experimenting. Possesses power without the wisdom of our kind. The glowing eyes focused on Superman. I have come to determine if you are a threat to the Great Link, or an opportunity for our evolution. Eris appeared on an adjacent screen, her calm facade cracking for the first time. Loss. The Founders did not authorize your presence here. The Founders of the Dominion do not speak for all our kind, Loss said dismissively. Some of us chose a different path. And now I choose to evaluate Superman personally. He will come to my vessel, alone, or I will assume his presence represents a threat to shapeshifter kind and act accordingly. That sounds like a threat, Kira said, weapons charging. It is a statement of fact, Loss replied. Superman, you have 1 hour to decide. Board my vessel voluntarily, or face the consequences of refusal. I am not the Dominion. I am not bound by their treaties or their political considerations. I am simply a shapeshifter who refuses to allow a potentially dangerous anomaly to exist unchecked. The transmission ended. Superman looked at Cisco, then at the crystalline ship on the viewscreen. Another faction. Another demand. Another choice that could spiral into conflict if he made the wrong decision. Well, Cisco said quietly, I guess you don't have 48 hours to think anymore. The crystalline ship's interior was unlike anything Superman had encountered in either universe. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to breathe, and the floor beneath his feet felt organic despite its geometric precision. There were no visible controls, no crew stations, no technology in any conventional sense. The entire vessel appeared to be grown rather than built, and Superman suspected it might be an extension of Loss himself. The Founder stood in what might generously be called a bridge, a circular chamber with transparent walls that provided an unobstructed view of space. Loss had shifted from his humanoid form into something more abstract, a flowing shape that defied easy categorization but radiated awareness and intelligence. You came alone, Loss observed, his voice emanating from the shape without visible mouth or vocal apparatus. That shows either courage or foolishness. I have not yet determined which. You demanded I come alone, Superman replied, standing in the center of the chamber. I honored your request because I'm tired of misunderstandings turning into conflicts. But let's be clear, if you try to harm me or anyone on that station, you'll regret it. The shape that was Lost rippled with what might have been amusement. A threat. How very solid. You see everything through the lens of conflict and power, as if those are the only currencies that matter. Coming from someone who just threatened to attack unless I complied with his demands, that's rich. I stated consequences, not threats. There is a difference. Loss flowed into a more humanoid configuration, though his features remained fluid and indistinct. Tell me, Superman, what do you know of the Founders? What the Federation databases contain? You're shapeshifters, capable of assuming any form. The founders of the Dominion claimed they created their civilization to protect themselves from persecution by solids, beings with fixed forms who feared and hunted. Shapeshifters. The Dominion founders tell a truth, but not the complete truth, Loss said. We were persecuted, yes. But that persecution arose from our own arrogance. We were gods among mortals, Superman. We could become anything, go anywhere, infiltrate any society. And we used those abilities without wisdom or restraint. He gestured, and the walls shifted to show images, historical records of shapeshifters manipulating societies, replacing leaders, causing conflicts. We thought ourselves superior. We saw no need to explain ourselves or justify our actions to those we viewed as lesser. And when the solids inevitably rose up against us, we were shocked by their ingratitude. Superman studied the images. They told a story of power wielded without accountability, of beings who considered themselves above the concerns of those they affected. It was uncomfortably familiar. The Dominion founders learned the wrong lesson, Loss continued. They concluded that solids could not be trusted, that order must be imposed through force and genetic engineering. They created the Vorta and Jem'Hadar, beings programmed for loyalty and obedience. They built an empire on the principle that shapeshifters must control everything to ensure their own safety. He paused. I learned a different lesson. I learned that power without connection breeds fear, and fear breeds violence. So I left the Great Link and have spent centuries among solids, learning to understand rather than control. Why are you telling me this? Because you faced the same choice I faced long ago. Loss shifted form, becoming an exact duplicate of Superman, costume, features, even the subtle ways he held himself. You are godlike among mortals. You can do what they cannot, survive what would kill them, perceive what they cannot sense. Every day you make choices about how to use that power. And every day, the beings around you must trust that you will continue to make benevolent choices. The duplicate Superman walked. How long did it take to find that balance? I am still finding it. Loss turned away. Now go. The Romulans will not wait forever, and I would prefer not to destroy their fleet if it can be avoided. Superman transported back to DS9, materializing in ops just as Sisko was coordinating defensive positions with the Defiant and several Klingon ships that had arrived as reinforcements. The political situation was deteriorating rapidly. Romulans demanding extradition, the Federation refusing, Klingons spoiling for a fight, and the Dominion's heiress watching everything with calculating interest. Superman, Sisko said the moment he materialized, I need to know right now, are you going to fight if the Romulans attack? Because if you are, I need to factor that into our tactical planning. If you're not, I need to know that too so I can evacuate civilians. Superman looked at the viewscreen showing the Romulan fleet, then at Loss's crystalline ship, then back at Sisko. Every choice led to consequences. Every action created ripples. And standing here, at the center of an impending battle that might reshape quadrant politics, he finally understood what everyone had been trying to tell him. He couldn't keep reacting to crises without context. He needed connection, accountability, and yes, limitations that weren't self-imposed. Commander Sisko, Superman said clearly, I'm ready to make a choice. But first, I need to know something. If I officially align with the Federation, submit to Starfleet oversight and command structure, would you trust me? Would Starfleet trust me? Or would I always be the outsider, the weapon they're afraid to use? Sisko studied him for a long moment. Honestly? Some would never trust you. Fear of power is built into Federation culture after the eugenics wars. But others. You, correct you when you err. He gestured toward DS9. The Federation is flawed. Their bureaucracy is frustrating. Their debates seem endless. But those flaws exist for a reason, to prevent any single being or entity from accumulating too much unchecked power. Including you. The Federation wants to control me. So does Section 31, the Dominion, everyone. No. They want to understand how you fit into their structures of accountability. There is a difference between control and accountability. Loss's expression became almost sympathetic. You fear being used, Superman. I understand that fear. But refusing all connection, all oversight, all external input, that is how beings like us become the very monsters we fight against. Isolation breeds certainty. Certainty breeds absolutism. And absolutism breeds tyranny. Superman walked to the transparent wall, looking at the stars beyond. In his own universe, he'd had the Justice League. Batman to question his judgment. Wonder Woman to challenge his assumptions. The Flash to remind him of hope. Even Lex Luthor, in his twisted way, served as a check on Superman's power by constantly forcing him to justify his actions. Here, he had none of that. No peers. No equals. No one who could genuinely challenge him to be better rather than simply more powerful. What are you suggesting? Superman asked. Submit to genuine limitations, Loss said. Not self-imposed restrictions you can ignore when convenient, but external frameworks that force you to consider perspectives beyond your own. Join the Federation officially, with all the oversight and accountability that entails. Or align with the Klingon Empire under their codes of honor. Or even work with the Dominion's founders to help them understand benevolent power. But choose some form of connection that binds you to beings who can say, no, to you and make it matter. And if I refuse? If I maintain my independence? Then you will drift, Loss said quietly. Alone, powerful. Around the real one, a mirror reflecting uncomfortable truths. But what happens when you make a mistake? When your judgment fails, your patience runs out, your principles compromise. What happens when Superman decides he knows better than the societies he claims to protect? I don't decide for people, Superman said firmly. I help. I protect. But I don't rule. Don't you? The duplicate gestured, and the walls showed footage. Superman stopping a Romulan warbird, trading himself for hostages, fighting the Borg, making blood pacts with Klingon. In every one of these situations, you made unilateral decisions that affected thousands or millions. You didn't consult governments. You didn't seek democratic approval. You acted according to your own moral code, and everyone else had to accept the consequences. Because people were in danger. Waiting for committees and protocols would have gotten them killed. Exactly. The duplicate smiled. You believe your judgment is superior. And perhaps it is, your actions have saved lives. But that's what every tyrant believes, Superman. That their wisdom justifies their authority. That the ends justify the means. That power in the right hands is power righteously used. Loss shifted back to his original form. The Dominion founders believe this. Section 31 believes this. The Borg Collective believes this. Even the Federation, with all its democratic principles, believes this when it suits them. The Prime Directive applies to primitive species but not to Federation expansion. Everyone believes they are the exception to the rules that govern others. Superman felt anger rising but forced it down. So what's your point? That I should do nothing? Let people suffer and die because acting makes me a tyrant? No. My point is that beings of great power face an impossible dilemma. Action or inaction, both carry moral weight. Both have consequences that ripple beyond our ability to predict or control. Loss moved to the transparent wall, looking out at Deep Space Nine in the distance. I have lived for over 800 years, Superman. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have witnessed beings of tremendous power, some benevolent, some malevolent, most somewhere between. And I have learned one immutable truth: power without limits becomes corruption, regardless of initial intent. I have limits, Superman protested. My own moral code. My commitment to preserving life. My self-imposed limits, Loss interrupted. Which can be self-removed whenever you decide circumstances justify it. That is not a true limit. That is merely delayed inevitability. He turned to face Superman directly. The Dominion founders impose external controls, genetic conditioning, military oversight, absolute hierarchy. It is tyranny, yes, but it is tyranny with structure. You impose no such controls on yourself. You are a weapon without a safety mechanism, an engine without brakes. One bad day. One moment of overwhelming grief or rage. And everything changes. Superman thought of his own universe, of the moments when he'd come close to crossing lines he'd sworn never to cross. When Doomsday killed him. When Darkseid threatened Earth. When Lex Luthor's manipulations cost innocent lives. The temptation to stop showing restraint, to use his full power without compromise, had been there every time. He'd resisted, but Loss was right, that resistance was a choice, not a limitation. What do you want from me? Superman asked quietly. I want you to understand what you are, not just what you do. Loss extended a hand, and his fingers elongated into tendrils of liquid gold that floated in the air between them. I can show you, if you permit it. A temporary merging, not assimilation like the Borg, but connection. I will experience your consciousness, and you will experience mine. It will last only moments, but in those moments, you will understand what 800 years of wielding power has taught me. Increasingly certain of your own righteousness because no one can effectively challenge you. And one day, maybe years from now, maybe decades, you will make a decision that seems entirely justified in the moment but leads to catastrophic consequences. And you will wonder how you became the very thing you fought against. A transmission interrupted their conversation. Cisco's voice, Superman, were detecting unusual energy signatures from Loss's vessel. Are you all right? I'm fine, Commander, Superman replied. We're just talking. Well, talk faster. We've got a situation developing. A Romulan fleet just appeared at the edge of sensor range. And they're demanding we turn over both you and Loss for crimes against the Star Empire. I'd really like you back on the station before this turns into a shooting war. Superman looked at Loss. Your timing could be better. The Romulans have been tracking me for years, Loss said with what might have been a smile. They view independent founders as threats to their intelligence operations. This was inevitable. He gestured toward the chamber exit. Go. Return to your people. Consider what I have shown you. And remember, the greatest power is knowing when not to use power. Superman headed for the transporter coordinates, but paused at the threshold. Loss, that memory you showed me. About the species you accidentally destroyed by helping them. What happened to you after that? I spent 200 years in isolation, convinced that any contact with solids would cause harm. I became so afraid of my power's consequences that I refused to act at all. Loss's form rippled with remembered pain. And in those 2 centuries, I witnessed countless preventable tragedies I could have stopped but didn't. I learned that inaction has consequences too. Eventually, I found balance. Helping when possible, accepting that perfection is impossible, learning from failures rather than being paralyzed by them. Why would I let a shapeshifter into my mind? Because I am offering something no one else has, perspective. Section 31 wants to use you. The Federation wants to categorize you. The Dominion wants to replicate you. The Klingon want to test you. I want to understand you. And more importantly, I want you to understand yourself as you truly are, not as you imagine yourself to be. Superman studied the golden tendrils floating in the air. Everything in his training, his instincts, his experience screamed danger. Letting an unknown entity access his consciousness was insane. And yet, Loss had a point. Superman had been in this universe for 6 months, reacting to crises, making decisions that affected millions, operating on principles imported from another reality entirely. He'd never stop to question whether those principles translated appropriately to this universe's complexities. "If you try to take control of my body or mind," Superman said slowly, "I will resist with everything I have. I have no interest in controlling you. I am not the Borg." Lassa's tendrils pulsed with gentle light. "But I will not lie to you, what I show you may be uncomfortable. You may not like what you learn about yourself. Are you willing to face that possibility?" Superman took a breath he didn't need. Then he nodded. "Show me." The golden tendrils extended, touching Superman's forehead with a sensation like warm water flowing across his skin. And then he was lost, floating in the Great Link, experiencing the merged consciousness of thousands of shapeshifters, feeling their collective fear as solids hunted them, feeling their arrogant certainty that they deserved to rule those lesser beings. He was Superman, standing over Lex Luthor's broken body, the temptation to end it forever so strong he could taste it, knowing that one squeeze of his hand would save countless future victims. He was lost, discovering a species he'd accidentally destroyed by introducing technology they weren't ready for, watching them tear themselves apart with weapons they didn't understand, understanding too late that helping had been worse than abandoning. He was Superman, hearing Lois scream, rushing to save her, choosing her over a building full of people because he couldn't bear to lose her, learning later that 17 people died in the collapse he might have prevented. He was both, neither, something between, experiencing 800 years of wisdom and 30 years of power, seeing the pattern emerge, beings of great capability making impossible choices with insufficient information, trying desperately to do good while causing unavoidable harm. The connection broke. Superman staggered backward, his mind reeling from the intensity of the shared experience. Lois reformed into his humanoid shape, looking drained from the effort. "You felt it," Lois said quietly. "The weight. The inevitability. No matter how hard we try, no matter how pure our intentions, power at our scale creates consequences we cannot fully control or predict." Superman's voice was hoarse. "That decision about Lois. I never told anyone about that. How could you? I didn't extract the memory. You carry it with you, always. The guilt. The knowledge that you chose love over duty and people died because of it." Lois moved closer. "But here is what you must understand, that was the right choice. Because if you cannot be human, if you cannot make human choices and human errors, then you are not a hero. You are a machine. And machines do not inspire hope. They inspire dependence at best, fear at worst. Then what am I supposed to do?" Superman's frustration boiled over. "You've shown me that action and inaction both cause harm. That power creates problems regardless of intention. What's left?" "Humility," Lois said simply. "The recognition that you do not have all answers. That your perspective, however enhanced, is still limited. That you need the very beings you protect to guide you, challenge. Like me, would see you as what you've proven yourself to be. Someone trying to do right in impossible circumstances." He paused. "The question isn't whether we trust you. It's whether you trust us enough to let us tell you no when we think you're wrong." Before Superman could answer, the Romulan fleet opened fire, not at DS9, but at Lois's vessel. Dozens of ships simultaneously unleashing everything they had, trying to destroy the independent founder before he could escape. And Superman had seconds to decide what to do about it. Superman didn't think. He reacted. He flew through DS9's hull, molecular density adjusting to pass through the metal without damaging it, and accelerated toward Lois's crystalline vessel at a velocity that made space itself seem to compress. Disruptor fire and plasma torpedoes lit up the void like a deadly fireworks display, all of it converging on the shapeshifter's ship. Lois's shields, if they could be called that, shimmered with an iridescent energy that absorbed the first wave of attacks. But the Romulans had come prepared. The Laren radiation bursts, specifically designed to disrupt organic matter at the molecular level, penetrated the defenses. The crystalline structure began to crack, fissures spreading across its surface like fractures in glass. Superman positioned himself between the ship and the fleet, arms spread wide. A dozen torpedoes detonated against his body simultaneously. The explosions were spectacular, enough combined firepower to vaporize a small moon. Superman felt the impact, felt the heat and radiation wash over him, but his Kryptonian physiology converted the energy into stored power. He emerged from the fireball unharmed. "Cease fire," he shouted, knowing the Romulan sensors would detect his voice vibrating through space. "Loss is under my protection." The Romulan response was immediate. Commander Siegel's face appeared on a transmitted holographic display, her expression cold. "Superman. We meet again. How unfortunate that you continue to interfere in matters that do not concern you. You're about to commit murder. That concerns me. We are eliminating a strategic threat to the Star Empire. The shapeshifter Loss has infiltrated our society countless times, stolen state secrets, and destabilized our government. He is a war criminal who has evaded justice for 3 centuries. Siegel's tone was unyielding. "Stand aside, or be considered an accomplice to his crimes." Superman glanced back at Loss's damaged vessel. Through the crystalline hull, he could see the Founder's form flickering, injured, possibly dying from the Laren exposure. The very weapons designed to kill shapeshifters were succeeding. "Commander Siegel, I understand you believe Loss is a threat. But executing him without trial isn't justice. It's revenge." Superman kept his voice calm, diplomatic. "Let the Federation take him into custody. There can be a proper legal proceeding, evidence presented, all sides heard." "The Federation?" Siegel laughed, a harsh sound. "So he can escape during transport. Shift into a molecule and vanish through a vent. We know the shapeshifter's capabilities, Superman. Imprisonment is impossible. Death is the only certainty. Then you leave me no choice." Superman flew directly at the lead Romulan warbird, not attacking but making his presence undeniable. The ship's shields flickered as he approached, the energy barrier designed to repel weapons fire and conventional threats. But Superman wasn't conventional. He phased through the shields, a technique he'd been practicing, learning to vibrate his molecules at frequencies this universe's technology couldn't detect, and placed both hands against the warbird's hull. "I'm not going to hurt anyone," Superman said, his voice transmitting through the metal directly to the ship's interior. "But I'm also not going to let you kill Loss. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to power down weapons and withdraw to the neutral zone. Or I'm going to disable every ship in this fleet, one by one, without causing casualties. Your choice." Inside the warbird, he could hear Siegel conferring with her officers, their raised voices debating tactical options. Someone suggested ramming speed. Another proposed self-destructing to take Superman with them. Siegel overruled both, her strategic mind calculating probabilities. "How do you propose to disable 23 warbirds without killing anyone?" Siegel's voice came through the hull. "Even you cannot be everywhere simultaneously. Watch me." Superman accelerated to one of the other warbirds, used his heat vision at precise frequencies to overload the ship's weapon systems without breaching the hull, then moved to the next vessel before they could react. His enhanced speed made him appear to be in multiple places at once, here disabling a targeting array, there fusing a disruptor manifold, everywhere preventing violence without causing it. The Romulan fleet scrambled to respond, but Superman had spent 6 months studying this universe's technology. He knew the vulnerabilities, the design limitations, the precise points where targeted intervention would neutralize threats without endangering crews. It was surgical, precise, and utterly devastating to the Romulans' offensive capabilities. In 3 minutes and 42 seconds, he disabled 17 of the 23 warbirds. Siegel's ship was among the remaining 6, and she made a decision that caught Superman off guard. Instead of continuing the attack, she transmitted to the entire fleet, all vessels, cease fire and withdraw. Fall back to Romulan space immediately. This engagement is suspended. The warbirds began to retreat, their cloaking devices activating as they crossed back into Romulan territory. But Siegel's ship remained, hovering in space with weapons powered down but shields still active. "Superman," she said, her image appearing before him again. "You have made your point. Your speed and power are considerable. But consider what you have just done. You have crippled a Romulan military fleet to protect a known criminal. The Tal Shiar will not forget this. The Senate will not forget this. You have made an enemy of the Star Empire today." "I prevented a murder," Superman corrected. "If that makes us enemies, so be it. Principles." Siegel's expression was almost pitying. "You Kryptonians and your principles. Tell me, when those principles inevitably conflict with reality, which will you abandon? The principles or the reality?" Bay. Loss was stable now, his liquid form contained in a regenerative stasis field. The golden shimmer pulsed rhythmically, like breathing. "You're going to meet them," Loss said weakly, his voice emanating from the stasis field. "The founders of the Dominion. Yes. Because of you. Because you showed me that power without connection leads to isolation, and isolation leads to corruption." Superman placed a hand against the stasis field. "Whatever happens in the Gamma Quadrant, know that your lesson meant something. Changed something. Then perhaps, my 800 years, weren't entirely wasted." Loss's form rippled. "Be careful, Superman. The founders will try to convince you that order through control is the only way. They will show you the chaos of freedom, and ask if such chaos deserves to exist." He paused. "And the terrible thing is, they might be right. Or wrong. Or both. That is the question. Only you can answer." Superman left the medical bay and headed for the Defiant, where Cisco and a skeleton crew were preparing for departure. Chief O'Brien was running final diagnostics. Worf was at tactical. And Odo, perhaps most significantly, had volunteered to join them. "A changeling visiting the founders," Odo said gruffly. "This should be interesting." The Defiant undocked from DS9 and oriented toward the wormhole, that swirling gateway to the Gamma Quadrant where the Dominion waited. The Jem'Hadar ship fell into escort formation. "Helm, take us through," Cisco ordered. The wormhole opened, a spectacular vortex of light and energy that defied conventional physics. The Defiant entered, and Superman felt the transition, a moment of disorientation as they passed through a tunnel connecting 2 points in space that should have been impossibly far apart. They emerged into the Gamma Quadrant. And ahead, waiting with patient inevitability, was a Dominion fleet. Something about this galaxy. Every action creates obligations. Every favor generates debt. You've now helped the Klingon, angered the Romulans, and made a deal with the Dominion. You're accumulating alliances and enemies faster than any being I've ever seen. I'm just trying to help people. I know. And that nobility is going to get you killed. Or worse, manipulated into serving causes you don't actually believe in. Cisco leaned forward. "You asked me earlier if I'd trust you if you joined Starfleet. Here's my answer, I'd trust you completely. Because you've proven, again and again, that you value life above convenience or politics. But the question you need to ask yourself is whether you trust Starfleet enough to let us protect you from yourself." "Protect me from myself?" "Yes. Because right now, you're making decisions in isolation. Good decisions, mostly. But without context, without understanding the long-term implications, without allies who can tell you when you're about to walk into a trap." Cisco pulled up a star chart showing the quadrant's political boundaries. "Look at this. Romulan Star Empire, furious at you. Klingon Empire, conditionally allied. Federation, uncertain. Dominion, actively recruiting. And the Borg, still out there, still planning how to assimilate you. He looked up. You can't navigate this alone, Superman. No one can. Before Superman could respond, Odo entered the office. Commander, we have a problem. A Jem'Hadar attack ship just dropped out of warp near the station. They're not attacking, but they're not leaving either. And they're transmitting a message specifically for Superman. The three of them went to Ops, where the view screen showed a Jem'Hadar soldier, reptilian features, disciplined posture, eyes that held the genetically programmed loyalty of a warrior bred for service. I am first Karakan of the Jem'Hadar, the soldier stated. I bring a message from the Founders. Superman, your agreement to meet with them has been. She didn't wait for an answer. Her warbird cloaked and vanished, leaving Superman alone in space with Lassa's dying vessel. Superman flew back to the crystalline ship, using his X-ray vision to locate Lass within the collapsing structure. The Founder had reverted to his liquid state, a golden pool spreading across what remained of the ship's interior. The Leyran radiation still pulsed through the vessel, toxic and corrosive to organic matter. Lass, can you hear me? Yes. The voice was weak, emanating from the liquid itself. You saved me. Despite my warnings about the consequences of action. The irony is, not lost on me. Can you transport to DS9? Get medical treatment. The Leyran poisoning is difficult to treat. Especially for shapeshifters. Our cellular structure makes us vulnerable to molecular disruption. The pool rippled with what might have been pain. But yes. I can reach the station. If they will accept me. Superman activated his communicator. Commander Sisko, Lass is injured and needs medical attention. The Romulans have withdrawn, but he's been exposed to the Leyran radiation. Sisko's response came after a brief pause. We'll prepare a medical bay. Dr. Bashir is already standing by. But Superman, you need to understand, by protecting Lass, you've created a diplomatic incident with the Romulans. The Federation Council is going to have questions. A lot of them. I'll answer their questions, Superman said. After we save Lassa's life. He helped the shapeshifter transport to DS9, watching as medical personnel, moving with admirable professionalism despite clear nervousness, began treatment protocols. Dr. Julian Bashir, the station's chief medical officer, worked with focused intensity, his genetically enhanced mind processing treatment options at superhuman speed. The Leyran radiation has disrupted his morphogenic matrix, Bashir explained, scanning Lass with medical instruments. Shapeshifters maintain their form through a complex. Acknowledged. We will escort you to the Gamma Quadrant when you are ready. The Founders await your presence with interest. The transmission ended. The Jem'Hadar ship remained in position, waiting. Superman looked at Sisko, then at Odo, then at the view screen. He'd agreed to meet the Founders to save Lass. Now that commitment was becoming real, immediate, unavoidable. I need time to prepare, Superman said finally. To understand what I'm walking into. You need more than preparation, Sisko said. You need allies. People who can watch your back and tell you if the Founders are lying. He paused. Let me come with you. Not as your commanding officer, but as someone who's dealt with the Founders before. Someone who knows their tricks and their tactics. The Dominion might not allow that. Then make it a condition of your agreement. You said you'd choose the terms. So choose terms that keep you safe. Sisko's expression was earnest. Superman, I've been to the Gamma Quadrant. I've faced the Founders in their own domain. I know what you're walking into. And I'm telling you, you don't want to do this alone. Superman considered this. Everything Laws had shown him, everything Sisko was saying, pointed to the same truth: isolation was dangerous. Pride was dangerous. Believing he could handle everything alone was the first step toward becoming what he fought against. "All right," Superman said. "Commander Sisko accompanies me. Along with anyone else you think should be there. But we do this my way: we go, we listen, we leave if anything feels wrong. Agreed?" "Agreed." Sisko turned to Kira. "Major, inform the Jem'Hadar that Superman accepts their invitation, with conditions. Prepare the Defiant for departure to the Gamma Quadrant. And send word to Starfleet Command: they're not going to like this, but they need to know." As the station mobilized for what might be the most significant diplomatic contact with the Dominion since the war, Superman returned to the medical. At its center was something Superman had never seen: a massive structure that seemed to be made entirely of liquid, a shapeshifter construct on a scale that defied comprehension. This was the Great Link, the home of the Founders, where thousands of shapeshifters merged into a single ocean of consciousness. "They're hailing us," Worf announced. The view screen activated, showing not a Vorta or Jem'Hadar, but a Founder herself. Female in appearance, though Superman suspected gender was a choice for shapeshifters rather than biology. Her features were serene, ancient, and utterly alien despite the humanoid form. "Superman," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested multiple beings speaking as one. "Welcome to the Great Link. We are the Founders. And we have much to discuss." The Great Link was unlike anything Superman had ever witnessed. It wasn't a planet or a structure in any conventional sense. It was an ocean of liquid consciousness floating in space, held together by forces his enhanced senses couldn't fully comprehend. Thousands, perhaps millions of individual shapeshifters merged into a single golden sea, their thoughts and experiences blending into collective awareness while somehow maintaining individual identity. The Defiant approached slowly, flanked by Jem'Hadar warships that maintained respectful distance. Sisko stood at Superman's side, his expression carefully neutral despite obvious tension. Odo stared at the Great Link with an expression Superman couldn't quite read: longing, perhaps, mixed with apprehension. "I was part of that once," Odo said quietly. "During the war, I returned to the Link. Experienced what it means to be truly connected to my people." He paused. "It was overwhelming. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure." "What's it like?" Superman asked. "Being part of the Link. Imagine every thought you've ever had being accessible to everyone around you. Every memory, every emotion, every secret fear and hidden hope, all of it shared, examined, understood without judgment or privacy." Odo's normally gruff voice carried a note of vulnerability. "For shapeshifters, it's paradise. For anyone who values individual identity, it would be nightmare." The Founder's voice interrupted their conversation, transmitting directly to the Defiant: "We invite Superman to join us in the Great Link. Not permanently, we understand such merger would be uncomfortable for us solid. But temporarily, so that we may share understanding beyond the limitations of language." Sisko immediately stepped forward. "Absolutely not. We didn't come here for Superman to be absorbed into." "Commander Sisko." Superman placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's all right. This is why we came, to understand them. I can't do that from the safety of this." Potential for what? More war. More suffering. More species destroying themselves through inability to cooperate. Potential for something better than what you or I can imagine. Superman drew on his memories of humanity's achievements: art, music, science, philosophy, all of it emerging from the messy chaos of free individuals pursuing their own visions. Yes, freedom creates conflict. But it also creates innovation. Discovery. The possibility that beings might surprise you by being better than you expect. Or worse than we fear. Yes. Both. That's the risk of freedom. But it's a risk worth taking. The link fell silent, not empty, but contemplative. Thousands of founder consciousnesses processing Superman's perspective, comparing it against their own experiences, testing it against their deepest fears and highest hopes. Then the primary founder communicated again, we cannot abandon the Dominion structure. Too many beings depend on the order we have created. But perhaps we can experiment with greater autonomy in limited contexts. Allow some Vorta and Jem'Hadar to experience choice in controlled environments. Observe the results. Learn if your philosophy has merit beyond theory. It wasn't agreement. It wasn't even acceptance. But it was consideration, genuine consideration, which was more than Superman had expected. What would such experiments require? Superman asked. Oversight. Someone who understands both freedom and responsibility. Someone powerful enough that the Dominion cannot coerce them, but wise enough to recognize when intervention causes more harm than good. The Founder's presence intensified around Superman's consciousness. We ask you to serve as that overseer. Not as our servant, but as our conscience, the external voice that questions our assumptions and forces us to justify our actions. You're asking me to join the Dominion. We are asking you to help us become something better than what we are. Not through force or revolution, but through gradual annihilation. The primary founder appeared on the Defiance view screen, her liquid features hardening into something terrible and resolute. Superman, we require your answer now. Will you help us defend the Great Link? Or will you stand aside and allow the Romulans to commit genocide against shapeshifter kind? Every face on the bridge turned to Superman. Sisko, Odo, Worf, O'Brien, all of them waiting for his decision. Outside, two massive fleets prepared for battle. The Romulans advancing with overwhelming force. The Dominion mobilizing with genetically engineered warriors who knew no fear. And in the middle, Superman, the being everyone assumed would tip the balance, save the day, prevent catastrophe through sheer power. But Lassa's words echoed in his mind, power without wisdom is tyranny. Action without consideration is recklessness. If he fought for the Dominion, he'd validate Romulan fears of a founder-Kryptonian alliance. If he fought against the Romulans to defend the Great Link, he'd be starting a war that could engulf the entire quadrant. If he did nothing, he'd be allowing genocide. There was no right answer. No heroic solution. Just impossible choices with catastrophic consequences. Superman took a deep breath and made his decision. Hail all ships, he said. Romulan, Dominion, and anyone else listening. This is Superman. I'm going to try something stupid. If I survive, we'll have peace. If I don't. He looked at Sisko. Get the Defiant out of here and tell Starfleet what happened. What are you? Sisko started, but Superman was already gone, transported to open space between the two fleets. He hung there, alone, visible to every sensor and every view screen in the region. Then he began to glow. Evolution guided by principles you have demonstrated. Superman felt the weight of the offer. It was everything Eris had promised and more, a genuine opportunity to influence the Dominion's development, to help billions of beings move toward greater freedom. But it was also a trap of sorts. By accepting, he'd be bound to the Dominion's timeline, their framework, their ultimate authority. I need to consult with my allies, Superman communicated. This isn't a decision I can make alone. Consultation with solids who do not understand the complexities of founder philosophy. Consultation with beings whose perspectives differ from mine. Yes. Superman felt Odo's approval rippling through their connection. That's the point of having allies, they provide context I lack. Challenge assumptions I didn't know I was making. If I make this decision in isolation, I'm no better than you were when you decided to create the Dominion without consulting the species you'd be controlling. The primary founder's presence withdrew slightly, and Superman sensed something like respect. Your logic is compelling. Very well. Consult with your allies. We will await your decision. But Superman, understand that this offer will not remain open indefinitely. The Dominion faces threats from multiple directions. We need clarity, not endless deliberation. How long do I have? Return to your Alpha Quadrant. Consider our proposal for 1 month. Then return with your answer. In the interim, we will begin preliminary experiments with enhanced autonomy for selected Vorta and Jem'Hadar. If you choose to accept our offer, you will oversee these experiments. If you decline. The founder paused. Then we will pursue alternative strategies for ensuring Dominion security. Strategies you may find less acceptable than our current offer. It was a threat, subtle but unmistakable. Accept their proposal, or face a Dominion that pursued security through even more aggressive means. Ship. He looked at the founder's image on the view screen. But I have conditions. First, Odo accompanies me. He knows the link, understands how it works. He can guide me and ensure I can separate myself when the time comes. The founder tilted her head, considering. Acceptable. Odo is welcome to return to the link at any time. What other conditions? Second, Commander Sisko remains in direct communication. If I send a signal, any signal, the Defiant leaves immediately, and I leave with it. No delays, no negotiation. Also acceptable. Though we assure you, coercion is not our intent. We wish understanding, not subjugation. The founder paused. There is a platform near the link's edge designed for solid visitors. You and Odo will transport there, then wade into the link at the shallows. This allows gradual integration rather than overwhelming immersion. Worf checked his tactical sensors. Captain, I'm detecting no weapon signatures around that platform. It appears to be exactly what they claim, a visitor station. Sisko studied Superman's face, clearly unhappy with the entire situation but recognizing determination when he saw it. Your call, Superman. But if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you get out. That's an order, whether you're officially Starfleet or not. Understood. Superman and Odo transported to the platform, materializing on a curved surface that seemed to be made from the same substance as the link itself but solidified. The great link lapped at the platform's edges like gentle waves, golden and luminous. Up close, Superman could see movement within the liquid, shapes forming and dissolving, consciousness in constant motion. Last chance to reconsider, Odo said. Once you enter the link, the founders will know everything about you. Your memories, your fears, your capabilities. There are no secrets in the link. Then they'll know I'm serious about finding peaceful coexistence, Superman said. And I'll know if they're serious too. Fair trade. Killed in an accident the shapeshifter had been seconds too late to prevent. The parents grieved. Then they grew angry. If the shapeshifter could do so much, why hadn't he saved their child? Surely he could have, if he'd truly cared. Unless. The accusation spread, the shapeshifter had chosen not to save the child. Perhaps he'd even caused the accident. How could they trust a being who could become anyone, anything? How did they know he wasn't replacing their leaders, manipulating their society, controlling them from the shadows? Fear turned to hatred. Hatred turned to violence. The shapeshifter fled, hunted by the very beings he'd tried to help. He watched from hiding as they turned on each other, accusing neighbors of being shapeshifters in disguise. The society tore itself apart in paranoid frenzy. Superman felt the shapeshifter's anguish. The realization that his very existence, regardless of his actions, had been a destabilizing force. That power without accountability bred fear, and fear bred destruction. The memory ended, but its impact remained. Superman understood now. The founder's philosophy hadn't emerged from malevolence. It had emerged from trauma, from being powerful beings who'd learned that helping solids sometimes caused more harm than abandoning them. We created the Dominion, the primary founder communicated, not because we desired empire, but because we could not bear to cause more chaos. By controlling solids through genetic engineering and military force, we eliminate the fear that comes from uncertainty. The Jem'Hadar know their purpose. The Vorta know their role. The subject species of the Dominion know what is expected of them. There is no chaos, no fear, no potential for the paranoid destruction we have witnessed countless times. But there's also no freedom, Superman responded. No possibility for growth beyond the parameters you've set. You've created stability by eliminating potential. Superman pulled his consciousness back from the link, feeling resistance, the collective intelligence wanting to explore his mind further, to understand every facet of his psychology. But Odo helped him maintain coherence, and together they extracted themselves from the golden ocean. They stood on the platform again, dripping with liquid consciousness that quickly evaporated in the vacuum of space. The Defiant waited nearby, its weapons powered but not armed. Ready to fight if necessary, but hoping not to. Did you get what you needed? Odo asked, his voice rough from the emotional intensity of the link. I got more than I expected, Superman said. They're not evil, Odo. They're traumatized. An entire species shaped by fear and trying to create safety through control. That doesn't make them right. No. But it makes them understandable. And maybe, with time and effort, changeable. Superman looked at the Great Link, at the golden ocean representing thousands of shapeshifter consciousnesses. They offered me a role. Overseer of autonomy experiments. A chance to help the Dominion evolve towards something less authoritarian. Odo studied him carefully. And are you going to accept? I don't know yet. I need to talk to Cisco, to people I trust, to. An alarm cut through their conversation. The Defiant's hail, Superman, Odo, were detecting multiple contacts. Romulan warbuds decloaking at the perimeter of Dominion space. Count is 200 vessels. This is a full-scale invasion fleet. Superman and Odo transported back to the Defiant immediately, materializing on the bridge to Chaos. Tactical displays showed Romulan ships emerging from cloak across a wide front, weapons hot, moving toward the Great Link with clear hostile intent. Cisco to Dominion Command, the captain transmitted. What the hell is happening? A Vorta appeared on screen. Not Eris, but a male administrator whose expression carried grim certainty. The Romulans have declared the Founders an existential threat to Alpha Quadrant stability. They claim Superman's visit to the link represents evidence of Dominion Kryptonian collusion. They are moving to eliminate the Founders before such an alliance can be formalized. That's insane. Superman protested. I'm not forming an alliance. I'm just talking to them. The Tal Shiar does not care about nuance, the Vorta said coldly. They see only threat. And they have convinced their government that preemptive action is necessary. He paused. The Dominion fleet is mobilizing. This will be war unless the Romulans withdraw. On the view screen, Superman watched the Great Link begin to change shape, the peaceful ocean reorganizing into something more defensive. Jem'Hadar attack ships poured out of nearby facilities by the hundreds. Founders were separating from the link, taking individual form to coordinate military response. Superman, Cisco said urgently, you're the one they're using as justification. Maybe if you. If I what? Leave. That won't stop them now. The Romulans committed to this attack the moment they decloaked. Superman moved to the view screen, watching the fleet advance. They're not here because of me. They're here because the Dominion terrifies them, and they think eliminating the Founders will destroy Dominion cohesion. They're not wrong, Odo said grimly. Without the Founders, the Dominion would collapse into chaos. The Vorta and Jem'Hadar are genetically programmed to serve them. Remove the founders, and you remove the entire command structure. A transmission cut across all frequencies, Commander Siegel's voice, broadcast to the entire region, forces of the Dominion. The Romulan Star Empire has tolerated your presence in the Gamma Quadrant because you remain contained. But your attempts to recruit Superman represent expansion of your influence into the Alpha Quadrant. This cannot be permitted. Surrender the founders for trial, or face. Odo nodded slowly. Stay close to me. I'll help you maintain coherence so you don't lose yourself completely. And Superman, don't fight it. Resistance makes the experience more disorienting. Let the link flow through you. They stepped into the golden ocean together. Superman felt it immediately, a sensation like warm water, but alive, aware, welcoming. His skin began to tingle as the link made contact with his cellular structure, and for a moment he panicked, thinking his molecular density was being compromised. Then Odo's voice came to him, not through sound but through direct thought transfer, relax. You're not dissolving. The link is simply reading your surface consciousness. Let it happen. Superman forced himself to calm, and the sensation shifted from invasive to curious. The link was examining him the way he might examine an interesting artifact, probing gently to understand rather than to harm. He became aware of presences around him, thousands of individual minds maintaining their distinctness within the merged whole. And then he was in. Suddenly Superman wasn't just himself, he was also the founder who had spoken to him, experiencing her 8,000 years of memory. He was a Jem'Hadar soldier dying in battle, feeling pride at serving the founders. He was a Vorta administrator managing a colony world, calculating resource distribution. He was Odo, experiencing the security chief's isolation from both shapeshifter and solid communities. He was a young founder fleeing persecution from solids who feared shapeshifters, feeling terror as they hunted him. He was a founder during the decision to create the Dominion, feeling the collective determination that never again would they be vulnerable. He was a founder experiencing the moment they genetically engineered the Vorta and Jem'Hadar, feeling the moral weight of creating sentient species designed for servitude. And through it all, he felt the link's central philosophy, order. Control. Protection through. Not with heat vision or any specific power, but with the accumulated solar energy his cells had been storing for 6 months. He released it all at once in a pulse that lit up space like a newborn star. It wasn't an attack. It was a message. A demonstration of power so overwhelming that both sides had to reconsider whether fighting was worth the risk of him choosing a side. The pulse faded. Superman floated in space, deliberately vulnerable, deliberately exposed. And then he spoke, his voice transmitted across all frequencies. I'm not anyone's weapon. Not the Federation's, not the Dominion's, not the Klingon or Romulans. I'm just someone trying to find a way to live in this galaxy without making things worse. Both of you, Founders and Romulans, are about to make things catastrophically worse. So here's what's going to happen instead. We're going to have a conversation. Superman's words hung in the void between two fleets poised for mutual destruction. The silence that followed was deafening. Hundreds of ships, thousands of combatants, all waiting to see if a single being could prevent war through sheer audacity. Commander Siegel's face appeared on every viewscreen, her expression a mixture of fury and calculation. Superman, you overstep. The Romulan Star Empire does not negotiate with terrorists or their sympathizers. Stand aside, or be counted among our enemies. I'm not asking you to negotiate, Superman replied, still floating alone in space. I'm asking you to think. You've brought 200 warbuds to destroy the Founders. Let's say you succeed, you kill every shapeshifter in the Great Link. What happens next? The Dominion collapses, Siegel said with cold certainty. The Vorta and Jem'Hadar, without their gods to serve, will fall into chaos. The threat is eliminated. Wrong. It was Odo's voice, transmitted from the Defiant. The changeling's face appeared on a split screen beside Seattle's. I've lived among solids long enough to understand what you don't. The Founders may have created the Dominion, but the Vorta and Jem'Hadar have their own culture now. Their own identity. Kill the Founders, and you won't get chaos, you'll get revenge. Billions of genetically engineered warriors with nothing left to lose and a single target for their rage, the Romulan Star Empire. The primary Founder's voice joined the conversation, her tone carefully modulated. Security Chief Odo speaks truth. The Dominion would not dissolve. It would transform into something far more dangerous, a military force driven by vengeance rather than order. Is that truly preferable to the current arrangement? Seattle's expression flickered with the first sign of uncertainty. Superman pressed the advantage. You're afraid the Dominion will expand into the Alpha Quadrant, Superman said. I understand that fear. I've seen. Has experience with treaty monitoring and neutral arbitration. We could provide the legal framework and administrative support for Superman's surveillance work. He provides the eyes and ears, we provide the infrastructure and diplomatic channels. Superman turned to look at the Defiant, surprised. Sisko continued, you wanted accountability, Superman. You wanted external limitations that weren't self-imposed. This is it. You monitor the border, but you report through Starfleet channels. We verify your observations, contextualize them within treaty law, and present findings to all parties. You get to act, but we ensure those actions serve diplomatic rather than unilateral purposes. It was exactly what Superman had been struggling toward for 6 months, a way to use his power within structures that provided oversight and accountability. Not joining Starfleet as a soldier, but partnering with them as an independent agent bound by agreed-upon protocols. I accept Commander Sisko's framework, Superman said. With one addition, the Klingon Empire should also receive reports. They're a major Alpha Quadrant power and Federation ally. Leaving them out would create suspicion. The Romulan and Dominion representatives exchanged glances, neither happy with the proposal, but both recognizing that their alternatives were worse. War would be costly regardless of who won. This arrangement at least provided a path away from immediate conflict. The Romulan Star Empire requires time to consult with the Senate, Seatle said finally. But preliminarily, we find this arrangement acceptable. Provided the buffer zone is genuinely demilitarized and Superman's reports are verifiable through independent means. The Founders also require deliberation, the primary Founder added. But we acknowledge the wisdom of avoiding war when diplomatic alternatives exist. We will consider Superman's proposal. She paused. However, we must note that our original offer remains open. Should you choose Alpha Quadrant societies, you'll know. And if they're genuinely trying to reform, you'll know that too. Seatle was silent for a long moment. Superman could see her weighing options, calculating risks and benefits. Finally, she spoke. What you propose amounts to a surveillance arrangement with you as the sole arbiter of compliance. Why should the Romulan Star Empire trust your judgment? Because my judgment has consistently prioritized preserving life over serving any particular faction's interests, Superman said. I've angered the Federation by bypassing their protocols. I've frustrated the Klingon by refusing to join their empire. I've resisted Section 31's recruitment. And I nearly died fighting the Borg rather than let them assimilate me. I don't have any loyalty except to principles, and those principles include preventing unnecessary wars. On the Defiance Bridge, Sisko turned to Odo. Is this crazy or brilliant? Both, Odo replied. But it might work. The Romulans get verification that the Dominion isn't expanding. The Founders get breathing room to pursue reforms without military pressure. And Superman gets a role that keeps him independent while actually using his power constructively. Worf looked skeptical. A single individual monitoring an entire border region? The logistics are impossible. For most beings, yes, O'Brien said, studying his sensor readings of Superman. But he can fly faster than warp, see through solid matter, hear communications across vast distances, and doesn't need to sleep more than a few hours a week. If anyone could actually maintain border surveillance, it's him. The primary founder spoke again, her tone measured. Superman, your proposal has merit, but it lacks structure. How would violations be determined? What constitutes acceptable military presence versus aggressive expansion? Who adjudicates disputes when our interpretations differ? The Federation, Sisko interjected, stepping into the conversation. Starfleet. Rode quite thoroughly. Is this a real planet? Superman demanded. Or are you just making up cautionary tales to manipulate me? Does it matter? Q asked. Real or hypothetical, the principle remains. You're proposing to make yourself the guardian of an entire border region, the arbitrator of compliance, the judge of violations, the enforcer of peace. You'll be doing exactly what that well-meaning fool did on Ventax too. Becoming indispensable, which means becoming a permanent feature of galactic politics. He's not wrong, Odo's voice came through Superman's communicator. I hate to agree with Q, but he's not wrong. The moment you become the border's monitor, you become responsible for it. What happens if the Romulans test you by sending a single scout? Do you respond? What if the Dominion claims their research station is civilian, but you suspect military applications? Do you investigate? Every judgment call you make becomes precedent. Every decision creates expectations. Q snapped his fingers again, and they were back in space. The Continuum has a proposal of our own, Superman. One that doesn't require you to become a cosmic border guard. Of course you do, Sisko muttered over the comm. We send you home, Q said simply. Back to your universe, your Earth, your dear Lois Lane. The rift that brought you here can be reopened with the right application of omnipotent power. We return you to the moment you left, no time lost, no consequences, as if these 6 months never happened. Superman felt his heart clench. Home. Lois. The Daily Planet. The Justice League. Everything he'd lost, offered back without cost or compromise. What's the catch? He asked, because there was always a catch with Q. No catch. Just a condition. You never speak of what you learned here. You don't try to return. You accept that this universe resolved its problems without you, and you resume your life as if this was all a very strange dream. Q's expression became unusually serious. Choices. Superman turned to face the fleets, the Great Link, the Defiant. I came to this universe by accident. But the connections I've made, the responsibilities I've accepted, the changes I might help create, those aren't accidents. They're choices. And I choose to stay and see them through. Q sighed dramatically. Nobility. How tedious. Very well, Boy Scout. The Continuum accepts your decision. But don't say we didn't offer you an out when this inevitably becomes complicated. He snapped his fingers. Oh, and one more thing, the rift that brought you here. It's permanently closed now. No accidental returns, no escape hatches. You've committed to this universe completely. Sleep well with that knowledge. Q vanished in a flash of light, leaving Superman floating in space with the weight of permanence settling over him. He would never see Lois again. Never return to his Earth. Never walk through the halls of the Justice League's watchtower or fly over Metropolis at sunset. This was home now. For better or worse. Superman, Sisko said gently, are you all right? I will be, Superman replied, surprised to find he meant it. Let's finish negotiating this border arrangement. We have work to do. Over the following hours, the details were hammered out. The Romulans agreed to withdraw their invasion fleet in exchange for a 20-light-year demilitarized zone along the Alpha-Gamma border. The Dominion committed to halting military expansion and permitting neutral monitoring. Starfleet would provide diplomatic infrastructure and treaty verification, with Superman serving as the primary observer. The Klingon Empire, informed of the arrangement, offered their own ships for border patrol, turning Superman's unilateral monitoring into a genuine coalition effort. It wasn't perfect. Every party harbored suspicions and reservations. But it was better than war. As the Defiant prepared to return to Deep Space Nine, Superman stood on the bridge watching the Great Link recede. To involve yourself more deeply in Dominion reform, the opportunity exists. Superman shook his head. I appreciate the offer, but no. I can't be both your conscience and your monitor. Conflict of interest. If I'm going to watch the border and report violations, I need to be genuinely independent of all parties. Even the Federation? The Founder asked pointedly. Even the Federation, Superman confirmed. I'll work within their diplomatic framework, but I won't take orders from Starfleet Command. This only works if everyone believes I'm actually neutral. Sisko's expression suggested he'd expected this answer. The Federation Council won't love that arrangement, but they'll accept it. Better to have Superman working semi-independently than operating as a complete wild card. The tension in space began to ease. Romulan warbuds powered down their weapons, though they didn't withdraw yet. Dominion Jem'Hadar attack ships returned to defensive positions rather than offensive formations. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was a step back from the precipice. Q appeared. One moment Superman was floating in space, negotiating the terms of a fragile diplomatic arrangement. The next, an omnipotent being in a Starfleet captain's uniform materialized directly in front of him, sitting in what appeared to be a comfortable armchair that definitely hadn't been there before. Well, Q said, crossing his legs casually despite the vacuum of space. The Boy Scout from another universe, trying to save everyone from themselves. How deliciously predictable. Every ship in the region went on immediate alert. The Romulans recognized Q, they'd encountered the Continuum before. The Founders had no direct experience but their sensors detected the reality-warping energy signature. On the Defiant, Sisko groaned audibly. Not now, Q, Sisko transmitted. We're in the middle of delicate negotiations. Oh, I know. That's precisely why I'm here. Q stood, walking on invisible ground toward. But a start. Sisko's voice cut in from the Defiant. Superman, where are you going with this? Somewhere neither side will like, but both might accept. Superman addressed both fleets simultaneously. Here's my proposal. The Romulans withdraw their invasion fleet. The Dominion commits to a demilitarized buffer zone along the Alpha-Gamma Quadrant border, no military installations, no weapons platforms, no secret facilities. And I agree to serve as a neutral observer, monitoring both sides to ensure compliance. Unacceptable. Siegel's rejection was immediate. You have no authority to. I have exactly the authority both of you gave me by making me the center of this crisis, Superman interrupted. The Romulans claim I represent a threat because the Founders might recruit me. The Founders want me to help reform the Dominion. Neither of you trust the other, but you both seem to think my involvement matters. So fine, I'm involving myself, but on my terms. The primary Founder's image shifted, her form rippling with what might have been consideration. You propose making yourself responsible for monitoring an entire border region? One being cannot maintain such oversight. No, but one being can serve as a credible neutral party both sides trust, or at least fear enough to not want as an enemy. Superman looked directly at Siegel. Commander, you're afraid I'll become a Dominion weapon. If I'm monitoring the border independently, reporting violations to both sides, that fear becomes groundless. I can't be the Dominion's ally if I'm actively preventing their expansion. And what prevents you from favoring the Dominion anyway? What binds you to impartiality? My word. Superman's response was simple, direct. I'm offering you something the Dominion hasn't given anyone, transparency. I'll report what I see to both the Romulan Star Empire and the Federation. If the Dominion violates the buffer zone agreement, you'll know. If they're developing secret weapons or infiltrating the Dominion's capabilities. But starting a war based on fear of what might happen is exactly what the Dominion did when they created the Vorta and Jem'Hadar. You're repeating their mistake. We are preventing a future catastrophe. Seathel's composure cracked slightly. Your presence in the Great Link confirms our intelligence. The Founders seek to recruit you as an ally. A being of your power combined with Dominion resources represents an unacceptable threat to Romulan security. Then let me make this absolutely clear, to you and everyone listening. Superman's voice carried across every frequency, every translator, every communication system in range. I am not joining the Dominion. I am not forming a military alliance with the Founders. I came here to understand them, not to serve them. The Dominion offered me a role, one I haven't accepted and may never accept. But even if I did, it would be as an independent voice, not as their weapon. He paused, letting that sink in. Then he turned his attention to the Great Link. Founders, you need to understand something too. The reason the Romulans are terrified of you isn't just your military power. It's your philosophy. You create beings programmed for loyalty and call it civilization. You impose order without consent and call it protection. Every species in the Alpha Quadrant looks at the Dominion and sees their worst nightmare, subjugation disguised as security. The primary Founder's image solidified, her expression difficult to read. We have explained our reasoning to you in the link. We have shown you our history, our trauma. I know. I understand why you made those choices. But understanding doesn't mean accepting. The Dominion represents everything I've fought against in my own universe, the belief that peace through control is preferable to freedom with risk. Superman's voice softened slightly. But I also recognize that you're not unchangeable. You offered experiments in autonomy. That's a start. A small one. Taught him things about himself he'd never considered. And he thought of Lois, waiting in another reality, unaware that he'd been gone at all if Q was telling the truth about time manipulation. Superman, Sisko's voice was quiet but firm. This is your choice. We'll respect whatever you decide. But know this, if you stay, you're not alone. You'll have allies, friends, people who believe in what you're trying to do. And if you go, we'll understand. The primary Founder spoke. If you return to your universe, the Dominion will likely pursue more aggressive expansion. Without a neutral monitor, the Romulans will assume the worst of our intentions. The fragile peace you helped create will collapse within months. Emotional manipulation, Q said with mock disappointment. Really, Founder? You're better than that. It is not manipulation if it is true, the Founder replied. Superman closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. Stay and become permanently entangled in this universe's politics, accepting all the responsibilities and limitations that implied. Or go home, resume his life, and trust that this universe would find its own path. Every instinct screamed to go home. To see Lois again. To stand beside Batman and Wonder Woman. To be Superman of Earth rather than Superman of nowhere. But Lassa's words echoed, the greatest power is knowing when not to use power. And wasn't refusing to stay, refusing to take responsibility for the consequences his presence had created, a form of using power? The power to walk away from problems he'd helped cause. Superman opened his eyes and looked directly at Q, I'm staying. Q's expression flickered with something that might have been respect. You're certain? Home, Lois, everything you've lost, all of it available right now. No strings attached beyond keeping silent about what you learned here. I'm certain. Because going home would be the easy choice, and I'm starting to understand that easy choices aren't always right. The Dominion's capabilities. But starting a war based on fear of what might happen is exactly what the Dominion did when they created the Vorta and Jem'Hadar. You're repeating their mistake. We are preventing a future catastrophe. Seathel's composure cracked slightly. Your presence in the Great Link confirms our intelligence. The Founders seek to recruit you as an ally. A being of your power combined with Dominion resources represents an unacceptable threat to Romulan security. Then let me make this absolutely clear, to you and everyone listening. Superman's voice carried across every frequency, every translator, every communication system in range. I am not joining the Dominion. I am not forming a military alliance with the Founders. I came here to understand them, not to serve them. The Dominion offered me a role, one I haven't accepted and may never accept. But even if I did, it would be as an independent voice, not as their weapon. He paused, letting that sink in. Then he turned his attention to the Great Link. Founders, you need to understand something too. The reason the Romulans are terrified of you isn't just your military power. It's your philosophy. You create beings programmed for loyalty and call it civilization. You impose order without consent and call it protection. Every species in the Alpha Quadrant looks at the Dominion and sees their worst nightmare, subjugation disguised as security. The primary Founder's image solidified, her expression difficult to read. We have explained our reasoning to you in the link. We have shown you our history, our trauma. I know. I understand why you made those choices. But understanding doesn't mean accepting. The Dominion represents everything I've fought against in my own universe, the belief that peace through control is preferable to freedom with risk. Superman's voice softened slightly. But I also recognize that you're not unchangeable. You offered experiments in autonomy. That's a start. A small one. The Continuum has decided you're a destabilizing influence, Superman. Your very existence here creates ripples we can't predict or control. Better for everyone if you return to where you belong. The Continuum is afraid of him, the primary Founder said, her voice cutting across the communication channels. Q, your kind claims omnipotence, yet you fear what one Kryptonian might accomplish if he remains in our reality. Why? Fear. Please. Q waved dismissively. We're simply tidy. Superman is a loose thread in the fabric of this universe. We prefer things neat. You're lying, Superman said quietly. The Continuum doesn't care about neatness. They care about entertainment, about testing species and individuals to see how they respond to chaos and impossible choices. If I was just a problem to be solved, you would have sent me home 6 months ago. You left me here deliberately. Q's smile was almost approving. Very good. Yes, we left you here to see what you'd do. And I must admit, you've exceeded expectations. Most beings granted godlike power either abuse it immediately or refuse to use it at all. You've managed a precarious middle path, helping without dominating, acting without assuming authority, making mistakes but learning from them. It's been educational. So why send me home now? Because the game is over. Q's tone shifted to something almost gentle. You've reached the decision point, Superman. Stay here and become the border monitor, accepting all the complications and compromises that entails. Or go home, resume your life, and let this universe sort itself out. Either way, the Continuum wins. We get to see what you choose when offered everything you've wanted. Superman looked at the fleets surrounding them, Romulan, Dominion, Federation. He looked at the Great Link, at the crystalline beauty of the shapeshifter civilization. He thought of Cisco, Odo, Los, Martok, everyone he'd encountered in this universe. People who had challenged him, helped him. Into the distance. The primary Founder had transmitted a final message: we will begin the autonomy experiments as promised. Perhaps, in time, you will witness a dominion that does not require genetic slavery. Or perhaps we will prove your optimism misplaced. Either way, you will be watching. You gave up going home, Odo said, standing beside Superman. That must have been the hardest decision you've ever made. One of them, Superman admitted. But also one of the clearest. I can't be in two places at once. Can't serve two universes. If I'm going to be here, I need to be all here, committed, invested, responsible for my choices. That's very Klingon of you, Sisko observed with a slight smile. Chancellor Gowron would approve. Superman laughed, the sound carrying a note of genuine warmth. I'm not sure that's a compliment, Commander. It is, Sisko said seriously. You've spent 6 months figuring out who you are in this universe. Now you're committing to becoming that person fully. That takes courage most beings never find. The Defiant entered the wormhole, and Superman watched the swirling vortex of light and energy that connected two parts of the galaxy. He'd passed through it to meet the Founders, and now he was returning, not as a visitor or a refugee, but as someone who belonged. Back on Deep Space Nine, word spread quickly. Superman had prevented a war, established a border monitoring arrangement, and turned down the chance to return to his home universe. Reactions varied from admiration to skepticism, but everyone agreed on one thing: the Man of Steel had made a choice that would define his place in this galaxy for years to come. In his quarters that night, Superman composed a message he knew would never be delivered. Dear Lois, I don't know if you can somehow hear this across universes, but I need to tell you. I found another way to help people. It's different from what we had, and I miss you more than words can express. But I think I'm where I'm supposed to be. I hope you understand. I hope you're happy. And I hope, somehow, you know I never stopped loving you. He deleted the message without sending it. Some words existed only to be said, not heard. Tomorrow, he would begin his work monitoring the border. Tomorrow, he would start building the structures and relationships that would define his role in this universe. Tomorrow, he would continue becoming whoever Superman needed to be in a galaxy that didn't have Justice League or Daily Planet or Fortress of Solitude. But tonight, he allowed himself to grieve what he'd lost and accept what he'd gained. He was Superman. Not of Earth. Not of Krypton. But of the stars themselves, and all the impossible choices they demanded. Conclusion. 6 months after a Kryptonian appeared in the Star Trek universe, the Quadrant's balance of power had fundamentally shifted, not through conquest or domination, but through one being's determination to find a third path between isolation and subjugation. Superman established his monitoring station on an uninhabited moon near the Alpha-Gamma border, a location chosen for its strategic position and symbolic neutrality. The Klingon gifted him a small communications facility. Starfleet provided diplomatic liaison officers. Even the Romulans, grudgingly, supplied sensor data to verify his observations. The Dominion began its autonomy experiments, granting limited choice to selected Vorta and Jem'Hadar under Superman's observation. Some experiments succeeded brilliantly, proving that beings could transcend their genetic programming. Others failed catastrophically, confirming founder fears about chaos. But the process continued, and change, gradual, uncertain, but real, began to take root. Loss recovered from his injuries and chose to remain in the Alpha Quadrant, establishing himself as a bridge between independent shapeshifters and both the Dominion and the Great Link. His 800 years of experience became invaluable in teaching Superman the patience required for lasting change. The Federation Council debated Superman's role endlessly, but ultimately accepted that having him work semi-independently was preferable to having him work against them. Section 31 continued their surveillance, but Sloane's attempts at recruitment ceased. They recognized that Superman had made his choice, and pressing further would only push him away. In the Klingon Empire, Chancellor Gowron declared Superman Batleth-wielding, an honored outsider who had proven his worth through combat and wisdom both. The designation opened doors across Klingon space and created unexpected diplomatic opportunities. And throughout it all, Superman learned. He learned that power without community led to isolation. That independence without accountability bred arrogance. That helping people meant accepting their right to refuse help, to make mistakes, to choose their own paths even when he could see better options. He learned that being Superman in this universe meant something different than it had meant on Earth 1. Not a symbol of hope eternal, but a reminder that beings of great power could choose limitation, could submit to oversight, could use their strength to create space for others rather than dominate them. The Man of Steel had become the man between worlds, neither fully allied nor completely alone, walking the narrow path between intervention and isolation, forever balancing the godlike power he possessed against the mortal wisdom he still struggled to attain. It was not the life he'd planned. But it was the life he'd chosen. And in the vast darkness between stars, where civilizations rose and fell on the strength of individual choices, Superman stood watch, flawed, uncertain, committed, and finally, irrevocably home. Live long and prosper. More stories await.